Happy Wednesday, party people. It's time for another Countdown to Classic. This is a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about World of Warcraft Classic. Each week we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Classic. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and as you all know by now, this is a show where it's not my opinion on World of Warcraft that counts, but yours. If you're new to the show, Countdown to Classic goes through your expert input on everything related to the sure-to-be amazing World of Warcraft Classic. Today, I was going to do another forums episode, but decided to hold that one until Friday, and I promise it will come then. If you send me a memory lane submission recently, don't lose heart, because I haven't forgotten about you. They'll be featured over the next week or so on the show, but today, I'll be playing you an extensive interview that I conducted recently with Defcamp and Melderon of Defcamp and Melderon TV over at YouTube about the ins and outs of healing and playing as a healer in general in World of Warcraft Vanilla, touching lightly on a number of classes. Don't stress if you want more on a particular healing class, as those chats will come eventually on the show as well, once we do the spec-specific interviews for the spec that you're looking for. And I can tell you that the Holy Priest interview is kicking things off soon around this time next week. Now, Defcamp and Melderon are quickly becoming two of my favorite people in the community, and we got along like a house on fire during this interview. And as a result of that, we wound up speaking for about 2 hours and 40 minutes on this topic. How the hell could you talk about healing for almost 3 hours, you might ask? Well, you'd be surprised. So consider yourselves warned that you're stepping into a pretty protracted chat. However, I can assure you that every minute is fun, relevant, and informative. So if you can't knock this one off in one sitting and wish it was a two-parter, please don't be shy in just hitting the pause button and coming back to finish it off another day. Now, if you're a fan of the show and you'd like to do a quick call into the show for the calling countdown segment, or if you'd just like to say hi, then please do reach out to me via the show's amazing Discord or on Twitter at Count to Classic with the number 2, or email me at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com. You'll find all those links in the show notes for each episode. But for now, let's get into this interview with Defcamp and Melderon, all about healing in World of Warcraft. Hello and a huge Countdown to Classic welcome to Defcamp and Melderon. How are you guys?
Great. How are you, Josh?
I'm doing great. Absolutely great. Yeah.
Doing well as well. Thank you very much. Now, obviously, I presume that guys, it's been a pretty big week for us all, hasn't it? We've had some classic update, a classic update drop. We had the job posting drop. We had fresh servers opening. We had free weekends over at Blizzard. It's kind of all happening this week, isn't it?
It has been a hell of a week, Josh. My hype levels are off the scale, man.
Yeah, and I must add that I think that Blizzard has really given us some very, very good insight into what they're thinking, and I think their line of thinking is keeping the game, keeping classic. I think is how I would put it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, just to let everyone know, basically, we've been in touch a bit recently, and you were on the show, obviously, time flies, a couple of months ago, and you were on for a short call for Calling Countdown, and I really had a good time talking to you guys, and obviously I've seen a bit of your work on YouTube, and I put the invite out there again, and I'm so thankful that both of you were able to come on the show and happy to talk to me today, and we're going to be talking about all things healing in the show. But just before we get there, one of the things I just mentioned that is relatively recent news, as in I think it's the last 24 hours or so, was that job posting that went up on the Blizzard website. Now, I know you guys put up a short video about it. I know a few people have put up a short video about it. I've mentioned it very, very briefly in the last show as well. I thought we'd just have a quick powwow for a minute or two on that one. what were your initial interpretations of that job posting? I'll ask you first, Defcamp.
Okay, so first thing is I saw the video from Tips, and I saw it, and my initial thoughts before I even started reading it was, okay, maybe this is like wishful thinking, and then as Tips began to read on, and I had it up with me, when I got to that first paragraph and it said, the original characters, animations, and spell effects, can you help us restore that look to our modern engine? And I said, okay, this is more than just wishful thinking now. This is legit. This is the real deal. Yes, they're not coming out and like putting it on a water announcement and saying we are going to have this, but it is basically the next best thing in my eye. And then when you go down to look at the responsibilities, restore old models and animations, basically I was so happy because this has been a bit of a conversation that we've been having on our channel. I think I've made 2 or 3 videos about graphics in general, and Melderon and I have always advocated for the original graphics and the original animations because for us it's more than the game; it's an art form, and also it brings to me puts everything together to make a real classy experience. So as soon as I started reading on, Josh, I was more than excited. I mean, if you watch the video, I was ecstatic.
And Melderon, how about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same here. I think it's a very clear, cut and dry example into what they're trying to do, and they're trying to bring the old game back to life. So, if you remember the first water cooler, they're trying to basically translating classic WoW into a modern server infrastructure, including the language they're using. And they're actually going to hire someone to deconstruct, if you will, it's a really bad word, but deconstruct the new style back to the old one. But it's something, a caveat that really needs to be pointed out. Nowhere in the job posting did it say there wouldn't be a toggle. So for people who are still hopeful for new graphics, that could still be a possibility. I just want to bring that up.
Absolutely.
But they never said anywhere in there that there is going to be a toggle, so I'm going to both ways like that.
Well, that's the beauty of it for me is we're still lying in ambiguity land. They haven't said yes, they haven't said no. And I just did a massive episode on my personal interpretation and the forum's interpretation of the water cooler post, and then stacking on with this job posting. I think that, and we all, hold hopes for no changes, blah, 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 but I think they still haven't ruled a lot of things out, but they haven't ruled them in as well. So it's interesting that you guys say what you did. My sort of spin on that as well is, whilst look, the one thing for me, and I lightly touched on this, I'm happy to go a bit further into it now from the last episode, but one thing for me was that it's wonderful to hear the repetition of the words that they used in that job posting, and it does convey a clear tone in terms of intention and goals with the classic project. However, as you say, it does not rule out updated graphics. It rules in old graphics. But quite frankly, I mean, happy to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I mean, we were never realistically, I don't think I've heard anyone anywhere ever suggest that we weren't getting the old graphics in the game. The argument has always been, are we either A, just getting the old graphics, or B, getting the old graphics and the new graphics via perhaps a toggle? I haven't heard many people say C, or we're just getting updated graphics. So I don't think it really changes our position in terms of expectations that much, but it's still great to hear that, sure, it rules out any situation where it was just going to be updated models, but as I say, I think there was an unrealistic option that many people weren't really perhaps devoting much thought to. What do you guys have to say about that? Defcamp, I might start with you.
So a big thing that I kind of took from this, and I went back and looked at this, because technically what they're doing, right, is using the modern code and trying to restore those old animations, those old spell effects. So my first thought was, okay, they're probably not going to make it to get to 100% to how it was in vanilla. So, I am thinking that maybe, if anything, it will be similar to how it kind of was in Wrath of the Lich King, because, they're working from modern code, and I don't know, I'm not too technical. I don't know too many technical things, but logically, I'm thinking that it's going to be maybe a bit sharper. It's going to look a little bit more modern than what we're used to on prod servers. But when it comes to those core things like, the fog in the distance obscuring the view, the weather effects, the old animations, the old graphics, they're going to try to implement those things as much as possible. My guess is that it's going to be like maybe 2 levels higher than it was originally, sharper, maybe some better shadows, that kind of thing. But like you said, Josh, I mean, nowhere did I hear that it's going to be classic WoW remastered, right? That's not what this is. It's just classic WoW. And where we see where this is going with this water cooler announcement and with the job posting is that they want to make it as classic as possible. Now, of course, when we're looking at it this way with using the modern code and using the old data, I don't think they can give us like exactly 100% of how it was in vanilla. And with the new, technology, modern things, I'm expecting it to be a little bit different in the sense that it might be a little bit sharper, the shadows might be a little bit better, but they're going to try as hard as possible to give us that vanilla classic feel. Does that mean a toggle? I don't know. Honestly, I don't think so. But the first I'm seeing is maybe being like 2 to 3 levels higher than it was. Maybe some better shadows, that kind of thing.
And Melderon, building on from that, was there ever a scenario where you thought in your own mind, even if it was something perhaps you didn't voice online, that we may just get a classic remastered project without any evidence of the old graphics, or were you always rested and it had your heart at ease that we were getting the old graphics?
Honestly, my heart was not rested until this job position came out, because I read, and this is maybe because I'm a realist. Maybe I dabble in pessimism sometimes, and I try to do that. But I think what happened was when the water cooler came out, when I saw the translation matrix, and they were talking about translating, literally translation matrix, matrixing different spells and effects in different ways, I thought that would open the door for new graphics. And there was a very loud minority on our channel that was saying, why would Blizzard in 2018 release a game with suboptimal, in their words, graphics? Why would they ever do something like that? And for me, we made a video called The Great Graphical Divide. And I was hoping that they're updating, so they're doing a lot of updates in retail. You've probably seen on Nixie actually made a video about this. They're updating everything. They're updating like animals, NPCs, buildings. They're updating stuff they never updated before. And for me, what better way to make a clear distinction between retail and vanilla than to actually make the graphics very different? And that's what I was hoping for. But that loud minority actually got into my head a little bit and was like, yeah, why would a company make a game in 2018 with low-res graphics? But when I saw this job posting, it really reinforced my faith in the Classic WoW team. I always had faith in them, but maybe more than I did before. And I think that we're going to get the closest thing, as Defcamp said, the closest thing possible. I think it's going to look like, as Defcamp said, close to Wrath of the Lich King, high-res, but still old graphics and animations. So I was on the fence, Josh, until I saw this job posting, honestly.
Okay, now just to wrap this one up, and then we'll obviously get into the bulk of the interview regarding the healing. But how do you think this job posting came to be? Now, obviously, I've got a number of options out there. We talk about why they've done this, and it's either, firstly, they're expanding the team. Secondly, someone maybe quit and they're just filling a hole. Or thirdly, the other option I'd like to think is probably the way in which it went down is that within the team, they were sitting around one day and someone in the room said the word retail, and then the leader of the project basically went full 300 of them and shouted out like Leonidas, "This is vanilla," and kicked them down a pit. And they just fell down some really long pit and they had to replace them. I mean, that's how it happened, right?
Of course. Of course.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, as we said, you are here for a very specific reason today, and we are going to be discussing everything healing in the game. And we're obviously going to go through a lot of information there. First and foremost, now I know you guys are very, very prominent on YouTube in terms of the fact that you post very often. People do know your names. You're active on the subreddit, all that jazz. A few people do obviously know of Defcamp and Melderon. People enjoy your work. But nonetheless, very, very quickly, I just want to whiz through both of your WoW resumes, and we'll try to keep them short and sharp answers just so we can machine gun through this as much as we can, but just so people know a little bit more about you two. And obviously, we've got the fact that you two are brothers, and we'll try and have a bit of fun with that while we go through the interview. But firstly, here we go. With as much specificity as, and maybe we'll go Defcamp, then Melderon, sort of back to back through all these questions. With as much specificity as you're comfortable with, where in the world are you from?
I am from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
And I am also from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but I now live in the Midwest.
All right. You guys must have celebrated a lot last Super Bowl, right? Go Eagles, I presume.
Oh, man.
Absolutely.
I had the pleasure of being home for that, so it was amazing. We didn't burn anything down, Defcamp and I, but the rest of the city did, so.
Not you personally. You might have been watching, but,
Yes, of course.
Now, how long have the two of you played WoW?
So we started playing in late vanilla. I'm not specifically sure, it was around 1.8, 1.9 before the launch of Entourage. So how long has that been? 13? A long time.
Oh, no, that's right. I remember now. We said last time that we were 1.9 babies, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, we're the class of 1.9. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Exactly. Now, flowing on from that, Defcamp, what was your first class, race, and character's name?
Very first, I'm not too, okay. So let's okay. So the class was Night Elf Rogue. Okay.
Wow.
And Alliance, yeah, I know that was my first and pretty much only Alliance character. My name actually got flagged for being something stupid, but I was younger. I was like 17 at the time, right? I used to watch a lot of Chappelle Show, stuff like that. The name actually got flagged, and I made my name Flag Name, and that was my name after that. So Flag Name was my name for a while.
Dare I ask if you're brave enough to tell us what the name that was flagged was?
I think maybe another time. We'll save that for another time.
All right. It wasn't something like Spooge Daddy or something like that, or
no, it was pretty. It was.
It was inflammatory. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. All right. Now, how about you, Melderon?
My first character was an undead warrior named Melderon. So not a surprise there. But undead warrior, maybe people didn't know, but it was not a shaman. People probably think I played shaman my whole life, but I started as a warrior.
Okay. Defcamp, I just want to ask one last question. Sorry. Considering you started out as Alliance, I'm picturing do you sort of jump in the shower crying like Ace Ventura now, just going, no.
So my experience, Josh, has been pretty awesome. In my heart, I'm Horde, okay? But when I play vanilla, there's something about the Alliance. I recently, was playing on private servers, things like that, and I also love Paladin. I love Paladin class, and of course in vanilla, that's the only choice. But once I leave the vanilla spectrum, I can't stand the Alliance. I don't know what it is. In vanilla, I'm okay with the Alliance. I prefer Horde, but I love Paladins. But once you start going past vanilla, I can't stand the Alliance.
So what you're trying to say is that in vanilla, you're faction curious.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, no worries. Now, again, guys, Defcamp, we'll kick off with you. How many other classes have you hit a level cap with?
Ooh. Now, is that over all time? Or?
Let's go over all time, yeah.
Okay. So we'll start with, in the beginning, I went Rogue. Then my next character was Priest. Then I went Paladin, Druid, Hunter, Death Knight, of course. What am I missing, Phil? I pretty much level
Warlock.
capped
Warlock.
Pretty much level capped everything except for a shaman and a monk, and I had a demon hunter, all that kind of stuff later. So pretty much everything other than a shaman and a monk at level cap.
Okay, how about you, Melderon?
My first level cap was the warrior, and then I went mage, and then I went death knight, then I went shaman, and then rogue. I think that's it.
Okay.
I've had other characters, of course, non-level capped, but those are all my level capped characters.
Now, were you both on the same server, and if so, what was it?
I started off on a different server. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I started off on Wildhammer, and then we went to Bleeding Hollow.
And then we briefly went to Area 52 and then back to Bleeding Hollow for some reason.
But generally you played together?
Oh, yeah.
Not at the beginning. Not at the beginning we didn't.
Oh, yeah, not in vanilla. Sorry. Yeah.
Didn't play together at the beginning. Is that some brotherly antagonism going on? You're sort of angry 16, 17-year-olds going, fuck you, I'm playing on a different server. I'll forge my own path.
We shared an account, so we couldn't play on the same server.
Ah.
Yeah,
because he wanted to play Alliance, and I wanted to play Horde, so we couldn't be on the same server. Nor could we play at the same time, obviously. So pooling
that paper route money together, was it something like that?
Kind of. I was just getting out of college, and he was still in high school, right?
I was in my senior year. Yes.
Yeah. So I was, of course, a poor college student, and he was a poor high school student. So that's how it worked out.
Fantastic. All right. Now, do you prefer to play on PvP or PvE servers?
Ooh, PvE, baby. PvP. Is that what it's? Yeah, PvP. Player.
It's funny. I've had a couple of interviewees on the show flub that question already, and they say PvE, and then they get back to me later and go, shit, I meant PvP. How did I fuck that up?
They sound familiar. I don't know what the hell.
And Melderon, how about you? PvP as well?
It's World of Warcraft, right? That's my argument. It's not World of Ballet Craft. That's what I used to say sometimes. I know I'm not going to try to piss PvE people off. Don't get me wrong. There's something very beautiful about leveling with not worried about being ganked. Trust me. But
it sounds like Fairyland, like a freaking fairy tale or something. I don't know.
Who needs fairy tales and fairyland in the World of Warcraft? That doesn't fit with high fantasy. What's going on?
No, I do like looking over my shoulder. I do like that feeling.
Too easy. Okay, is it the same in real life?
Well, we are Italian, so I don't know if that's. I'm just trying.
Okay, now what was your highest raid experience, Defcamp?
Ever?
Yeah, let's go. Well, let's go through vanilla and then of all time as well.
Okay, so vanilla, I did very limited raiding experience. I did ZG a couple times. I managed to get into an MC run where we finished off. I didn't even do a full clear. My vanilla experience was very PvP centric. I did a lot of PvP, a lot of long time leveling. But when I started in TBC and I made my priest, I did a clear of pretty much all the content in the Burning Crusade. I did the Eye when it was very challenging. That fight was very challenging. Kel'Thas, oh my god. So that started my raid career, and ever since then, I've kind of tried to, high-end raiding. Sometimes back and forth to PvP. Mythic raiding recently in Legion. So ever since the Burning Crusade, I've pretty much gone really strong into raiding.
And Melderon?
So my first raid experience was actually not until BC. I did Karazhan, and that was pretty much it. I didn't really become a raider per se until Wrath of the Lich King. We cleared Nax and Ulduar. I stopped playing for a while, came back for Pandaria, did some normal raids there, and then came back again for WoD. I did normal and heroic in WoD and normal and heroic in Legion. Never did any Mythic, but Defcamp has.
Okie dokie. Now, both of you, please do Defcamp. Then if he misses anything out, Melderon, chime in. Give us a quick plug for any places online where people can find you and your work. Go for it.
All right. Guys, first and foremost, YouTube. Defcamp and Melderon TV on YouTube, okay? We have all different kinds of shows. We have Def Talk where we have interviews. We have Super Play Brothers where you can watch Melderon and I have fun and make fun of each other. We have Melderon has vlogs. I have very little series called Intermission with Def Talk where we talk about all different kinds of things. What else? We
make guides as well.
We also make guides. I do plan on streaming. I've been saying that for a while now, but I have some time set out for that, especially with the new server coming. And also check us out on Twitter, on Discord. We're trying to make ourselves pretty have our own little community, and we like what we have so far. We have a nice little community. If you guys would like to join us, please come on over.
Okay,
absolutely.
Anything we left out, Melderon? Anywhere else we can find you?
No. So our Twitter and our Discord handle and links are in all of our video descriptions. So if you're interested in joining that, also I personally make a lot of shaman guides. So if you're interested in shaman leveling or shaman healing or anything like that, check those out as well.
All right. Now, both of you, well, actually not both of you. I'll say, well, if I can answer for you, Defcamp, I think we got your answer already. And it was slightly on the faction curious side, but we'll start with you, Melderon. Complete this sentence so we know where your allegiances lie. For the
Horde, Loktar Ogar, Blood and Thunder.
All right. And Defcamp, I'm presuming you're probably going to give the same answer these days.
Yes,
is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, guys.
Fan might be a little mad about that.
Now, guys, as I said, it's one of those things where we're going to be talking about something, well, no, I wouldn't call it niche here. It's one of the three main roles, being healing in the game. Just before we get into that, and I know I keep teasing people, but one sort of, now that we've done the questions about you, one more question that's not so much about your WoW resume, but about the two of you. And I do want to delve into this even more in depth on another occasion, but just generally now, what's it like playing with your brother, Defcamp?
It's frustrating as hell. No. So we often used to play as a healer tank combination. And Melderon likes to just charge away and complain, where's my healer, while I'm sitting there drinking. But I tell you what, I have gotten him out of some pretty sticky situations. But you know what? It's a great experience, Josh, because my brother and I, we're not only brothers, but we're best friends. And a lot of the time he's away, like right now he lives in Kansas, and WoW has allowed us to basically spend time together while he's not there, even though at times I want to kill him and he really pisses me off. But I got to say, you know what? If it wasn't for WoW, our relationship probably would be pretty crappy. So,
Melderon, anything to add on to that?
I think I have a lot of fun, like Defcam said. It really, WoW gives us a medium for us to. It's something we both enjoy, so that we have that, and that we have common ground, and we have a lot of other common ground as well. But we have WoW, and it gives us a way just to socialize and be with each other and talk about life. You know, when we're on Discord, we don't just talk about the game; we talk about everything. So it's an amazing opportunity, and Defcamp is an amazing healer. I'm saying that on here, and I've learned a lot from him. That's the truth, though. I've learned a lot from him in healing, and I again, like Defcamp said, I was originally a tank guy, and I think. Healing is something like, for me, it's like almost like it's like a cigar or wine or some, you have to really like get the flavor and really like learn about it more than the more you heal, the more you appreciate it. That's kind of where I'm at now. Yeah.
So it might be a bit of an acquired taste, would you suggest?
Acquired taste. That's what I was trying to find the words. Thank you, Josh. Yes, it's an acquired taste.
No worries.
Yes.
Now, Defcamp, you mentioned that you boys have gotten each other out of a few sticky situations. Melderon, I'll put that back on you. Has there been any in real life situations where you guys have had to have each other's backs?
Yes, definitely. Defcamp, he has no problem talking about this. Defcamp has some harrier days back in the day. And, and I was always, not always the one, but I'm kind of the one who was like rushing into, like charging like a warrior.
He was.
And taking aggro and yeah.
Absolutely he was, yeah.
Okay. And just finally, what does the family say? You talked about hanging out with your parents on Super Bowl night and stuff like that. When, if people come up to them and clearly I'm going to be tongue in cheek on this one, but if your mum's friends come up to her and say like, well, my son is a doctor and my daughter is a lawyer, does your mum reply, oh yeah, fuck you, bitch. Well, my son's a 60 shaman and the other is a 60 priest.
Well, actually, Melderon is a doctor too, so.
Ah, there you go. Well, even better. Doctor plus, healer.
Hold on. Yeah. I'm not a medical doctor, and I still have 6 months before I get my doctorate. I have studied genetics, so I don't do medical doctorate. So But I do that.
You know what? You're more of a doctor than anyone listening to this podcast, I'm sure. Unless there might be a couple of doctors listening. I should apologize, but I'd
maybe,
worry.
You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
We have a lawyer here. So.
Exactly. Yeah, well, a shitty one, but yeah, a lawyer. I'm here. It's all good. No, all right, guys. Thanks for that. So basically, you mentioned on that healing aspect there when you talked about what it's like playing with each other, and that's why we're here. So here's the question, and you did just touch on it very lightly, Melderon, when you said it's acquired taste, but just diving a little bit deeper, Defcamp, you have healed through a lot of raids. Melderon, you've definitely spent time as a healer, but you defer somewhat to Defcamp in terms of his experience, and you say that he is an amazingly skillful healer. So Defcamp, I'll start with you, just saying, why healing? What appeals to you about the sport of healing, so to speak?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. And I don't know if it's the fact that I like to, I don't want to sound like trying to toot my own horn, but I do like to help in people in kind of ways, you know what I mean? But I've always kind of been, I feel like off to the sidelines, not really, kind of an outsider, you know what I mean? I've always kind of felt like an outsider, and I've always kind of tried to be maybe sometimes to a fault in my life, a people pleaser. So I feel like a lot of that comes from my personality. Now, I do like deal damage, but there's something about healing that satisfies me in a way that nothing that DPS and tanking cannot. Something about helping another person, about being that person in the raid or in the group that is being relied on and kind of not being focused on, though. The tank kind of is out there. They're in the middle. They're running in and they're getting the aggro, and the healer just kind of sits back and, takes care of the group. That's always been kind of appealing to me. I honestly don't, I'm sure there's psychologically I'm trying to think of these different reasons, but I honestly just love seeing that green bar fill up. I just love seeing that bar going from half to full. And it's almost like a meditation to me in a way as well. When I get into the zone, and like I say to a lot of people, timing is everything. And you get into that zone and when the damage is going to come, what heal you got to put out, whether it's going to be a rank 1 or a rank 7, or, if you want to put out a renew, that's going to be a waste, or you want to use a flash heal. The little decisions you have to make in your head and what you're doing, and you almost feel like, in a way, you're the one kind of holding the group up. Even though the tank is the one, who has the aggro, they're kind of the commander. In a way, the healer is more of the, I don't know, like the maybe controller, or it's hard for me to put it, but they're the one that everyone else is depending on, right? And to me, that's, I don't know, it's very appealing. I love being in that role. I love being able to, buff people, heal people, and just be able to help out any way I can. And, I love it.
And Melderon, flowing on from that, just if I could ask you just to touch very lightly on what your healing experience in the game is, as well as this question, knowing that Defcamp was as skillful as he was, as you say, and you initially played a tank, did he talk to you about healing and convince you to come across and try it, and then you fell in love with it, or how did it come about?
No, I was actually adamant not healing at all. I didn't like the idea of it. I thought it was kind of wimpy. I hate to say that, but I did feel that. Because as a tank, you're running in there, you're taking the damage, and you're like, come on, guys, keep me up. But it's funny. I became a healer because I fell in love with shamans. So I've only healed with shamans. That's the only class I've ever healed with. And starting in Wrath of the Lich King and going forward from there, and then coming back to Classic and healing as a shaman there. And I'd just like to add that I think for me, the healer is not the front commander, but he's the rear commander. He's the guy with the binoculars looking out into the battlefield, looking where the damage is coming from. And I think that, and then kind of providing intelligence to the front lines. So I think that's the way I look at healers. But yeah, I fell in love with it on my own. Defcamp, sure. I mean, he definitely had an influence. I mean, he was an amazing healer, and I wanted to try it as well. but he didn't really tell me to ever heal. He was just kind of like, you do your own thing, and that's basically how it happened.
So if I embrace the ways of healing, which I am planning on doing eventually, should I rock up to BlizzCon with a huge T-shirt that says Rear Commander on it?
Hey, I would know exactly if you're the only person in the T-shirt. I'm like, I know what he's talking about.
I know that.
It might confuse a few other people, but that's okay. We'll know. It'll be an inside joke. All right.
Right.
So, Defcamp, I'll come back to you for this next one. Well, you already touched on it. We talked about what you feel the kind of personality types that might be attracted to healing. But what do you have to say about something like this? I found this one quote. I was tearing through the forums trying to find something, sort of funny or giving shit to a bit of healer types. And I found this one on the subreddit from user Apocalypsa when they said this: I personally hate healing with a passion, but I also like Hawaiian pizza. So my question to you is it a strange thing to fall in love with healing? Is it a kind of a horses for courses deal? Do you find that it's not really one personality type that's drawn to healing? It could be anyone. And for the people who haven't tried it before, they might be surprised if they gave it a go.
I do think it takes a certain kind of person to, I know there's people who, heal when they have to, like, a person makes a priest, I'm going shadow, I'm not going to heal. And then eventually they give in because their guild basically forced them to heal. But there are the kind of people that I think healing becomes exactly what they wanted. And, it's funny because healers always get the shit end of the stick, right? People always blame it on the healer. Oh, it's the healer's fault. Oh, it's this and it's that. When honestly, I can honestly say in every situation I've been in, whether it's been a tank, whether it's been, a DPS, and I've done my fair share of that, the most stressed as I have ever been is as a healer. I feel like healers have to deal with more than anyone else. If maybe that's just my personal situation, I don't know. But I feel that as a healer, you have this secondary duty kind of to, not let anyone die. Of course, you let someone die. Sometimes you have to let people die strategically. Sometimes if you're in a group or in a raid and DPS is taking a lot of damage, but you can only heal the tank, you have to let that DPS die. And then, of course, you get, what the hell? Why'd you let me die? I didn't get one heal, and people don't understand why you were healing the tank. The tank's taking so much damage that if you were to go off him for 1 second, he would have died.
Or they were standing in the mechanic.
Exactly, and that happens all the time too, Josh. People stay mechanics and then blame the healer. So it's become kind of like you're almost like a punching bag as a healer because you take on so much shit from people. And you know what? I don't mind that. I don't, because I feel like I've kind of taken on shit my whole life with other things. And personally, I like to when I shine as a healer, I know that I'm doing well. The other healers know that I'm doing well, but usually the rest of the raid could give a shit less. You know what I mean? It's all about the DPS. It's all about those numbers. And but you know what? That to me doesn't matter. But I totally think that, I think everyone can heal. But in order to, I'm not saying to be a great healer, but in order to be the person who loves healing, who wants to go back to it day after day, I do believe that's a certain, maybe personality type. I don't know. I've talked to a lot of other healers, and I definitely do see them as not introverts. It's weird because a lot of healers that I know, I feel very similar to them in a lot of ways. But I think that something comes out in you when you heal. I don't know what it is. It's something that comes out in me when I start healing that is it's different than who I am at other times playing a DPS or a tank. And I could talk about this forever, but there's so many things that to healing that I feel like you're kind of this unsung hero, you know what I mean? I mean, again, I'm not trying to sound too my own horn or anything like that, but you kind of are like the person who's keeping everything together but doesn't get any credit for it. And I kind of like that. I do. And I think that it takes a certain personality to be okay with that and to kind of enjoy that.
And Melderon, we talked about sort of getting a bit of shit. Can you basically tell me, for someone who is planning on being a healer and planning on rolling a priest when Classic comes around, what kind of shit talk can I expect? What are some of the greatest hits that you've gotten in your days?
Oh, God. So I think the best one is like, the obvious one that one everybody gets is where's the heals, right? So that's the one that I think every healer who's ever healed has seen. Where are the heals? Why aren't you healing me? So one thing I want to say flat out to all the DPSers, mostly DPS, tanks do it too. Healers cannot out-heal mechanics. The game is designed that way. So if you're standing in fire, no matter how much heal I give you, you will 99.9% die. Healers are not supposed to be able to out-heal mechanics. So if you're standing in things you're not supposed to be standing in, if you're not doing the things you're supposed to be doing, you will die.
Except in LFR. In LFR, you can out.
In LFR, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, but we're talking about Classic here, or maybe BC, right? So you can't do that. And the second thing is, like Defcamp already elaborated on, strategic healing is definitely real. If the tank's taking damage, the tank gets priority. If the tank is taking more, if you're at half health, I'm not going to heal you in Classic. If you're below half health, I'll give you a lesser healing wave. If I'm a shaman, a very small heal. Perhaps I'll just throw down a healing stream totem, and that should take care of you. So that's the thing, is you have to be able to pick the heals for the right situation, and then we'll go into that, I'm sure, later. But where's the heals? What are you doing? Like, it must be. So one of our friends would always used to say to us, "It's really easy just to stand in the back, just putting your hands up in the air." And I'm like, that's not what we're doing. We're doing a lot more than that. You know what I mean? It's not just putting my hands up in the air. But I think a lot of DPSers think that's what we do. We just put our hands up in the air. So anyway, that's basically where I'm at with that.
Now, Defcamp, have you ever gotten into any really big fights with people over the way in which you heal an instance?
Not really. I mean, honestly, in the mythic level of, when it comes to like healing in BC, I have been lucky to have been surrounded by really incredible healers in my experience. In BC, I was with some amazing healers. In Wrath, I was with some amazing healers. In Kata, with some really great healers. And recently in Legion, the same goes as well. But especially like recently in Legion, I was playing Holy Paladin. And I had joined this guild, and there was another Holy Paladin in the group. And it started off as, he thought he, was better than me and knew more than me. So he was always trying to, give me pointers or telling me that I'm doing something wrong. But in the end of every fight, my HPS was way higher than his. So, eventually he he was always cool with me to the front, but apparently he was always saying things, some healers can be very catty and talk about, people behind the back. I'm sure it happens with other healers as well, especially in a guild setting. But you know what? To give him credit, he did just outright and say, he'd always say, you're the better healer. And I'm like, dude, listen, I don't see it that way. I see, each healer, when you're healing correctly and you're doing what you're supposed to do, healing per second, that none of that really matters as long as you're doing your job, what you're supposed to be doing. In BC, if you're a tank healer, you're paladin, your job is healing the tank. You're not going to heal the raid. You're not going to have as much healing per second, that kind of thing, and that's okay. That's okay. It doesn't, just because the HPS is you're not at the top doesn't mean you're a bad healer. As long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and doing it efficiently, that is, in my eyes, a good healer. Now, nowadays, the whole everyone, all they care about is numbers, and I've really noticed that, especially in Legion, with parsing and all this thing, all the the way of ranking people. It's become such a horrible thing, I think, because people tend to forget about everything else and just try to get the highest numbers they can, which leads to wipes, which leads to progression loss. And, I would call people out on that. And, certain people would say, well, I'm trying to get, high parse, this, that, and the other. And I would get in, kind of heated arguments with people saying, forget about the parsing, forget about this. And, I got to say that for the most part, healers are. I've never had an argument to the point where, it's been like a rage quitting kind of thing. Most healers are pretty, down to earth that I've come across with, and they've all kind of been like, okay, let's figure this out, this kind of thing. But I have had the occasional encounter with, especially someone who has been the same class as I am, trying to prove themselves over me or trying to be competitive in that way. And I'm really not that much of a competitive person. I'll, mess around with people and, you got hot number one on this fight, I got number, but to me that really doesn't matter. What matters is the progression and what we're doing and making sure that everyone's doing their job. So you occasionally get the people who just care about numbers. And, you get in little fights, little things. People leave guilds, and sometimes people can't cut it. And that happens a lot. In my experience, I have been surrounded with some pretty amazing healers. So I've been pretty lucky in that respect.
And Melderon, let me throw this one to you. In terms of, I've just got another quote here from Reddit, and this is from user Zandrius, and I'll read this one out to you. And it basically says, I wanted to know how healing was in vanilla. At some point I heard it should be really boring. Priest is the most complex class, I think. So is it also really fun to play with just pressing one or two buttons? And my question for you, flowing on from that Reddit post, is this. Is it a misconception that healing is just sitting there spamming one or two buttons? And is it a fun mechanic or concept to play in the game?
Okay, so the first question, I think the best way to answer that is you definitely are, you're spamming one button at low level, yes. Before you have multiple heals, you are spamming one button. However, let's take Shaman, for example. As soon as you get Lesser Healing Wave, now you have 2 heals. Then you have Chain Heals, and you have 3 heals. You have a Totem that heals for you. And then you have downranking, which is huge. So in vanilla, which is nothing like Legion, you get your spells level with you. In Legion, you have to train your spells, as everyone probably – I'm sorry, in Classic, you have to train your spells, as I'm sure everybody knows in this podcast. But the most mana-efficient spell may not be the top rank. So you have to weave in lower ranks of spells to become the most mana-efficient. You will also use the top rank heals if you're in emergency situations. So when I heal my bar, I have like 7 different heals in my bar. So it's a huge misconception that you have one heal. That's true maybe before level 20, yes. But after that, no. It gets a lot more complicated. And it is very, very fun because with that complexity comes fun for me because I like complexity and I like being able to use certain heals in certain situations. So yes.
Now, Defcamp, when we talk about that notion of fun...
Oh, Josh, can I add one more thing?
Yeah, no, sure, go for it.
There's also aggro mechanics. So heals pull a lot of aggro. So you have to be careful not to heal too much. Sorry, I just wanted to say that.
No, yeah. Great point. Defcamp, taking all of that in mind, one thing from a personal point of mine is I've always wanted to heal. I feel like you. I feel I've got the personality type that would have me enjoy the game healing. The one thing that's always stopped me when I've tried it in the past is I've found that I'm just staring at meters. And it's something that comes up in some video games where, if you've got the big mini map in the corner, you find yourself staring at the mini map instead of looking at the glorious graphics in front of you. In WoW, I find myself, doing as we say, the whack-a-mole thing and just staring at these meters, these green bars going up and down. And I didn't take the time to look at all the beautiful animations and character models and everything that Blizzard took so much time to develop for us. And the boss is down. I'm like, fuck, I missed the whole thing. I kind of didn't see it. What do you have to say about that? Is it more than just staring at meters?
It absolutely is. And that's a common thing that happens. It's tunneling, and it's something that you want to actively try to stay away from doing because you need to be aware what's going on in the raid. And more so than anything, you need to be aware of the mechanics that are going out. As a healer, like I said, timing and efficiency is everything. So if a boss is about to do a mechanic, you need to know what's about to happen. You need to know who's about to get hit, what rank spell you're going to use, and if you're going to, and that's the other thing too is when you're looking at the bars and looking at, who's got the most healing going out at the time, that is all and well. And, what really matters is getting out the heal in time, because you are essentially basically there, and you have to try to get your heals out before the other healers do, right? But you want to do it in an efficient way. You don't want to throw out a rank 6 or a rank 5 greater heal and it be completely wasted, and that is a big problem, because you're throwing out this long powerful heal, and then you have 3 other holy paladins who are doing rank 1 flash of lights and get that tank to full health first. You're basically wasting that whole heal. So for me, it's a lot more of the thinking aspect and trying to be as efficient as I can, with still being aware of what's going on around me, making sure that I'm doing everything I possibly can to try and help my raid. Whether that's, being in the right position, whether that's, making sure that you have the right buffs out. As a holy paladin, you got to make sure you have out, you have your blessings, which are probably the most powerful buff in vanilla. I mean, blessings are huge. And, we all know that, 15-minute, there used to be 5-minute buffs. And when you get your greater blessings, that's 15. You're weaving out, making sure that people have your blessings. If you're a priest, you're a dwarf, you have fear ward that you're putting out on people. If there's fears, you have your buffs. You have, trying to negate damage with power word shield. So there's definitely a lot more. I used to do the same thing, Josh, when I first started healing. It was just all about staring at those bars and getting them to full. And I used to make a lot of mistakes because I wasn't focusing on what was happening in the fight. I wasn't watching the fight to see, okay, the boss has a debuff right now. Say, you're in like Black Maras and the boss has a debuff. You're a priest. You need to dispel that debuff. You're sitting there just looking at the bars. Well, if you would have had the boss target, you would have known that there was a magic you could have dispelled and the tank would be alive but you were just paying attention to the bar. And that's something that I did a lot in the early days of healing, because I just thought, all I got to do is keep these bars up and make sure they're full health. And that is not true. There is a lot going on in a raid, in a dungeon, that the healer can be a part of, whether it's
all while dodging mechanics too.
Exactly. Too. All while, weaving in and out of mechanics, all while trying to manage your threat. You don't want to start a fight with HOTS on a target, because as soon as the tank pulls, that mob's coming to you. There's little things that you have to be aware of. And to be the best healer you can, it's about having that timing down. It's about having the efficiency down. And it's about being aware of your surroundings.
Okay, now Melderon, I've got a quote here from you that I found from someone named Jonathan Brill over at Quora, and they said the following. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be the best-looking girl at a party? The one where you walk in, all the heads turn your way, and everywhere you go, you get all the attention? That's what it's like to be a geared-out healer in World of Warcraft. What does that feel like to be so popular?
I think that's definitely true. Although I have to say it's the same for tanks. But let me just go. This isn't about tanks. But for healers, definitely, because you've dealt with so much shit. That's how I feel about healers. You've dealt with so much shit that you've gotten this gear, and that's I bow down to them. Right? It's kind of the thing where it's like, dude, you've had to deal with so much crap from DPS, from tanks, from and let's not remember gear. Possibility of getting gear. I mean, maybe not as bad as rogues, but healing gear is healing gear in vanilla for the most part. Maybe not. So if you're a paladin or a shaman, you can wear cloth, leather, mail, and if you're a paladin, you can wear every piece of armor. So especially for a priest, like fighting for all that cloth gear, I give you a lot of credit. And, so you've done a lot of raids and dungeons, obviously, and you've proven yourself. So I think that's definitely healers definitely should get recognition for that. Maybe even more than tanks, because there's only 2 to 3, maybe 4 tanks depending on the fight, right? So, yeah, definitely.
So when it comes time to find a group, and Melderon, I'll just stick with you for this one for a second, but when it comes time to find a group and you're hanging out in town or whatever, do you have people sort of coming up to you going like, that's a real purdy dress? And just sort of going like, you look like a pretty good healer to me. And then you might say in reply, why, thank you. I bought it from, it's branded Rear Commander. So I really like their stuff.
Yes, Rear Commander. Yes, exactly. You never let me live that down. Anyway, so it's, so I agree. I think that, yes, people have the healing. I'll just say this in general in vanilla, the combination of pieces for a healer can look very strange. It can definitely do that. And I think, but for me, I don't care what I'm wearing because I know I got that doing hard stuff. And I think people in vanilla realize that. Now, if you're walking around like that in Legion or BFA, people are like, dude, there's this thing called transmog, right? I'm not saying I would ever transmog. I think the beautiful thing about vanilla is that you have to be happy with who you are and what you're wearing because there's no way of changing it. And I think it's a symbol, and I think most people really wouldn't make fun of a healer for wearing a gown or wearing a dress because it's all about the stats. It's all about the stats, baby, for me.
So I've got made fun of plenty of times for wearing a dress, but
really?
Oh yeah.
Wait, are we still talking about the game? Good one, Josh. So, Defcamp, I'll ask you this. Really, so what's the longest you've waited for a group? Is it ridiculously instantaneous?
For the most part, it pretty much is, Josh. I have never gone out, looked for a group, and said, "Oh, I got to give up because I can't find anybody." And usually as a healer, it's really nice too because if you're a good healer, people ask you to come to things. You log on, you get a whisper as soon as you log on, "Hey, Defcamp, we're about to run Ubers. You want to come?" Sure. So that is definitely nice. Now, when it comes to raiding, sometimes it can be rough, as long as you're in a good guild and things like that. But, and it's cool. The cool thing about vanilla is, it's pretty easy to get into raids and dungeons as even a mediocre geared healer because, you might just be that last healer filling in that last spot. You're going to be last on the charts and all, but you're still in the raid. You're in full greens, whatever. But people are taking you because you can offer, more than just heals per second, especially if you're like a paladin or a shaman and you have totems, that kind of thing. It's more than just bringing heals or bringing whatever. It's about bringing what you can bring to the experience, So, but I wanted to say one thing, when you guys were talking about the gear issue, getting gear nowadays in Legion as a healer is horrible because basically, I don't know how a lot of guilds do it, but my guild, they would gear the healer last. So you're sitting there waiting, everyone else is getting geared first, and then you get geared last. But that's just another thing you have to deal with as being a healer, helping the raid. Right? It's part of it. Okay.
Now, Defcamp, I just want to stick with you for this one, and then Melderon will come back to you for some cleanup on this particular point. But you started talking a bit earlier about some general tactics, and you mentioned the phrase situational healing as well. Mm-hmm. When someone, a beginner, let's say, you're talking to everyone here, maybe some people have healed, maybe some people haven't. Maybe some people think they know a lot about healing tactics when they've never actually played one. But my question's going to be, what are the general tips that people should keep in mind when they are managing healing an instance? You said earlier something already that I didn't realize because I haven't really seriously healed before. My stupid train of thought is, I'll just throw a hot up at the start because then that's a head start and it's all good. But then you say, actually threat's a thing and you've got to keep that in mind. And as soon as you said that, I was like, God, I'm such an idiot. But other tips like that, and also like things like when to bubble, when not to bubble. Like what are your general tips for everyone?
Well, that's a big, so bubbling, especially certain, any tank class that gets threat from being hit, like, well, you get this a lot in BC, like prop paladins, you do not want to bubble them, especially in the beginning of the fight. When they have no threat established, they are getting a lot of their threat through being hit. But again, Josh, like one of my main things that I say is timing and efficiency is everything, right? You want to basically, especially in a raid setting, right? You have to realize that there are sometimes, 5 other healers there with you or more that are also healing the same target that you are. And you don't want to throw, even if you see the tank drop down to below 50% health, you're not going to want to sit there and cast a really long heal unless it's a certain fight where you are basically just spamming, say, rank 1 greater heal over and over and over again, which sometimes can be efficient and can be good. But for the most part, you have to be, and that's the thing, you have to be constantly aware of what is happening next, okay? What is going on in the raid? Do you have people taking, raid damage? Is this a good time to maybe use AoE heal, a prayer of healing? And it's all about that efficiency and timing. So, a tip that I like to give people is, for a second, in the beginning of the fight, of course, you want to give your tank some time, but you have to have. I've seen a lot of pulls go bad, where that tank runs in and within 3 seconds he's dead because the healers haven't gotten into their rotation yet of healing. So it's really interesting to see when a tank runs in, what first thing is like, where do I start? Am I like, how is this person going to take damage? Is it going to be big whacks every so often, or is it going to be constant, consistent little damage? And that is how you're going to base your heal on. So if it's, a consistent damage, you might want to, as a druid, or you could use HOTS. But a lot of time, HOTS are wasted because you are basically never getting that tick to go and heal because people are healing the tank so quickly from half health to full, from half health to full, from half health to full, that sometimes your most efficient thing to do is totally forget about HOTS and just spam a rank 1 flash heal or a rank 1 greater heal, depending on the kind of damage. So you really have to see or know when going into an encounter what kind of damage the tank is going to be taking, what kind of mechanics the boss is going to be doing. Are you going to have to every so often throw out a prayer of healing? And it's something that I think if you have a little bit of knowledge of the fight, it definitely can give you a big head start. So, when you go into a fight, try to have a little bit of an understanding of, is this boss going to be doing spell damage? Is it going to be doing a lot of melee damage? Is it going to be, big ticks? Is it going to be big chunks of health every so often? That can give you a huge head start and a huge increase in your healing efficiency and healing per second. A rule of thumb, Josh, that I like to use is basically if you are healing with, say, Holy Paladins, they have the quickest heals, right? They have the flash heal rank 1 that you're not going to beat the time on that heal. So if you're out there with a bunch of other priests or a bunch of other paladins, you have to know what they're going to. So you're going to be fighting with people that are very fast healing. So when you see a tank take a little bit of damage, it's not even worth trying to throw out that flash shield because a paladin's going to beat you to it. So maybe you'll be better off doing a longer heal that you, if you get that timing down and you know when that heal is going to come off, that's the exact same time when that tank is going to take damage. It might be better off using a rank 1 greater heal. So there's a lot of different nuances that you have to be aware of. And I would say sometimes just sit there for a second and see how the damage is coming and then try to adjust to it.
And Melderon, I'll ask you the next couple of questions that I had, just flowing on from that. A fantastic description by Defcamp. Is there, when I'm in the midst of a fight and I'm doing all the things that Defcamp just said I should take into mind, is there any argument whatsoever for a healer hitting the occasional damage spell in 5-mans or raids, or should you always avoid them and have that mana up your sleeve in case shit hits the fan?
It's very dependent upon your group. I'd say that in a lot of 5-mans that I've done, You know the tank is very good. You know the DPS are doing their job, and they know how to CC. They know how to do. In those situations, sure. As a shaman, I throw a flame shot. I'll throw a chain lightning. But if I know that we're fighting a boss and there could be spiky damage, I never throw out any damage because I want to save as much. Mana efficiency is huge, like huge. So that flame shock could have wiped your group, literally. Yeah. Like that little bit of mana could have wiped your group.
The global cooldown too. Yeah.
And the global cooldown, correct. So we can go into HPME if you want at some point, but I'll explain that at some point. But I think that's about downranking, so that's a whole other situation, a whole other animal. But yes, I think damage is definitely possible if you are comfortable knowing that you'll regen that mana, and heals aren't going out constantly. In some raid situations, some dungeon situations, you will not have time to do damage. But if you feel you can, sure, why not help the group out a little bit? Yeah.
Melderon.
Josh, one other thing.
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to add that. So regen. So in vanilla, when vanilla first came out, regen started when you it would. So now the way it works in vanilla in a 1.12 is the second you're done and you hit the button for your heal, it's the 5-second rule or whatever to start the mana regen. Well, back in the day, the regen wouldn't start until after that heal was finished casting. So
5 seconds after the heal's finished versus 5 seconds as soon as you start the heal. Yeah.
So that is a big reason for people not to do damage, not to do other things, because if you're not healing, that's good because you want your regen to kick in.
Yeah.
And that is also a huge part, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention that. That is one of the biggest parts about healing in vanilla is to know when not to heal because you need that regen. The regen is huge. If there's no damage going out, do not waste yourself with putting out a damage unless you are at full mana somehow. If you go out and try to put out a damaging spell, that can totally ruin your regen. And that is probably one of the biggest things that you have to realize is, okay, so I just started casting this flash heal, and as soon as I take my finger off the button, 5 seconds from there, the regen's going to start kicking in. So you have to know, and you can look at your bar. You'll see your mana, going up depending on how much spirit you have or how much MP5 you have. As a priest, spirit is definitely better because you get bonus healing from it. As a shaman, as paladin, MP5 is the way to go.
Yeah.
And you really have to be aware of how much time you are spending not healing because you need to get the full amount of that regen. Things like that for Holy Paladins isn't such a big deal. You have Illumination. Basically, every time you crit, you get 100% of that mana back from that spell. Yep. So that's why Paladins, you will see them constantly healing. Heal, because every time they're critting, they're getting that mana back from that spell plus the regen that they have. And then there's also regen that you have during casting. So things like meditation allows 15% of your mana regeneration to continue while casting. That's also huge.
Yeah, and two clarifications. So real quick, two things is one is you as a healer, you may want to wait until your tank or target gets to a certain hit point percentage before you heal them, especially in 5-mans where the damage is a lot more predictable. So say your tank, your healing wave rank 5 will heal your tank from 75% to 100. You want to wait for that tank to get to 75% health and not use lesser healing wave because it's not as mana efficient. So you actually want to wait till he's like half health or 75% health, and then heal him. Yeah. Second thing is, just in case that no one knows, the difference between Spirit and static MP5. Spirit only regens mana after the 5-second rule elapses, whereas static MP5 regens mana no matter what. So those are two very different things that it's very class dependent. Shamans are MP5 is very friendly, and priests and then paladins as well, and priests love Spirit. So it's very class dependent, stat priority. So.
And Melderon, you mentioned a term earlier that I hadn't heard before, and I'm guessing I think I realize what the acronym is. But when you say HPME, hit points mana efficiency, or is what?
Heal per mana efficiency. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There you go. All right. What's that? Can you explain that to me?
Yeah. So basically, it's very easy to calculate, and then we're going to go into math class for a second. But so if you go into your spell book and you look at any of your heals, it says heals from X to Y for Z mana, right? So that's the same for every heal in the entire game. So if you take the average between the range, so say it heals from, let's say it heals from 50 to 100. So the average there is 75, right? And then you divide that 75 by the mana cost, you'll get some decimal. The higher that decimal is, it's not actually decimal, it's a whole number and a decimal after it. So whatever that number is, the higher it is, the more mana efficient your spell will be. So Blizzard designed the game so that the higher rank of a spell is more mana efficient. So if you look at if you make a graph of HPME, it's a linear increase. So as rank increases, so does HPME. However, there's a huge, huge caveat here. Bonus healing doesn't scale the same way with every spell and every rank. So the more bonus healing you have to actually go and test your spells and see which ones have the highest HPME. So rank 5 may be more mana efficient than rank 7 when you have 500 bonus healing. I hope that makes sense. But basically, the more bonus healing you have, the more that linear relationship falls apart.
Right. And that's why downranking becomes such and there are add-ons you can get that give you an estimate because, of course, heals are never the same. They are, from this amount to this amount up to, 33 plus healing on gear, stuff like that. So there are add-ons that you can actually get, which will show you the average heal that heal will put out. So say you have a rank 1 flash heal on there, it'll say I'm just putting out a number, I don't know, 343. And so you have a rank 4, it'll say say 1200 or whatever. And then that's the number that you can use to put into the equation. So it's really dependent, like Melderon said, on the bonus healing that you have. That's why it becomes such a different, and each spell. And, sometimes you would think, oh, this spell is way less mana, but that means it's more efficient. That's not how it works. You have to take into consideration the plus healing. And, this can be confusing sometimes, but it's really not that bad. A lot of the information is there on the web. If you can look it up, there's add-ons, and for a lot of new players, I think it becomes overwhelming. But, you'll see on there, rank 1, rank 4, these are the most efficient ones. Use them in these situations, blah, blah, blah. And it's really simple when you just look at it like that. You say, okay, I'm going to put these ranks of this spell on my bar. I'm going to leave the rest of them out there because they're not efficient and work with them in that situation. And, you can go into the data, look at it if you want to. It's nice to be educated on it and to know, why or how this comes together. But for the most part, you can download an add-on that'll give you the average. You can look up the information on the internet. You don't have to really worry yourself too much about it. But it is for the people who love number crunching and data. It's really fun to look at this stuff. And I know Melderon loves to do it, right?
Yeah, I do. I make a lot of videos like that. But honestly, if you're bored one day in Orgrimmar, just start healing yourself and write down how much it heals. Don't count critical strikes, so that's going to screw up the average. But if you just put non-critical strikes and just write down 10 numbers, and then take the average, and then you'll get an HPME. Just this is a little bit of theory crafting that everyone can do, honestly, and it's not even that difficult. It's really just taking averages, and I'm assuming most people know how to take an average, but
And then, again, there are add-ons for it. You don't really have.
Yeah, there are add-ons. Yes.
Yeah. And I think, again, this is why healing, I think, is so. There's so much more to healing than people initially think, and that's why when I really got into healing, I really loved it because it seemed to me like this was a totally different aspect of the game that I haven't explored yet. When I had my rogue. And I went headfirst into it, and I love it, and I still love it to this day.
Now, Defcamp, I'll stick with you just for this one. So when we talk about things, and you very, very, very lightly touched on it at the top of the show, but when we talk about things like overhealing and obviously healing charts, this is sort of a two-pronged question. Now, what can you tell us about the looming threat of overhealing? And also, how does that play into healers being competitive on charts and sort of just trying to outdo each other and not paying attention to overhealing?
So there's healing done and there's overhealing, of course. Healing done, now depending on the add-on, most add-ons have it. The healing done is the healing done from, the damage that is from the person that is being healed to put them to full, right? overhealing is the healing that is going over that cap into the extra, where you're basically all that is just wasted heals. So you see a lot of overhealing in vanilla, because especially like with paladins and things, because you're basically just spamming the heals. Even when the tank isn't taking damage, you're spamming your heals, right? Overhealing happens. It's a big part of healing. The fact is, you don't want to get too crazy about it. You're going to overheal a little bit, but you don't want to get to the point where you're just spamming. As a priest, priest is very more, as a healer, is using yours, and I think shamans is this way as well, is being more on the spot healing. So
yeah,
you're looking at what's happening and you're being more reactive to the healing. So in that way, you can kind of get away from too much overhealing. As a paladin, in my experience, I'm just sitting there spamming. I'm spamming flash of light, rank 1, and I am, because it's efficient, right? And you're getting, even though you might be doing a lot of overhealing, every time that tank is taking damage, that your flash heal is going every almost sec, boom, boom, heal, 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 heal. So yeah, a lot of that might be overhealing, but it's okay because it's efficient. Now the problem is when you overheal as a priest and as other classes, it is a waste of mana. It is very inefficient. And that is the issue of timing, where that comes in. Now, when you look at charts, I forget how it worked back in the day, but there were some add-ons that I remember that was a healing add-on that would just basically look at all the healing done that you did, whether it was an overheal, whether it was a heal that actually healed the target from 50 to 90%. That is true healing done, because it's not going over. But there are some, like back earlier in the day, add-ons weren't as technical as they are now, where it would kind of not take into effect that the overhealing was a lot of the overhealing would go into the healing done. But a lot of the times people say, well, you're not really doing the top healing because you're just overhealing all the time. So that becomes an issue. Not so much it can be in vanilla, but I think for the most part, as certain classes, especially as priests, especially as shamans, especially as druids, your main goal is to be as efficient as possible without overhealing. Every heal that goes over cap is basically a waste. As a priest, as a shaman, as a druid, it's okay as a paladin because you're basically sitting there spamming. Now, when you look at it from a perspective, and it's very different for the classes, especially for paladins and priests, and the difference that we have there. When you're looking at it as a situation as, I'm not going to use my most powerful heal in this situation because, if the tank isn't taking that much damage, 20% of that might become healing done because you healed from, say, 70 to 100%, but then the rest of that is all overhealing. And if you're constantly healing like that, that is being as inefficient as you can. So that's why down ranking is so important. That is why, this all comes together with down ranking, with efficiency, with timing. It's all tied in together. So when you talk about overhealing, when you talk about healing done, it's not like it's a separate thing. It's really all tied in together. And that's, I think, the most important thing to remember is that if you have your timing right, if you have the ranking right, and if you're doing it in a way where you're trying to be as efficient as possible and doing the timing right, then you won't have to worry so much about overhealing. And of course, it always happens. You're going to overheal. It's part of the game. And a lot of the times you'll see, like people post the overhealing meters. Okay, big deal. Paladins are for the alliance side, paladins are always going to be usually on top of the overhealing. If not, there's probably something wrong with that. If there's like a druid on top of the overhealing meters, then that's usually not a good thing. That means you're not being efficient with your heals. So that is, kind of a rule of thumb to remember as, any other class that isn't a paladin, really, is to basically just be as efficient as possible. And the overhealing you're doing is basically just wasted mana, wasted heals.
Melderon, just stepping outside of instances for a second. Now, let's say you're level 60, you might be doing some high-end dungeons, you might be raiding, what have you, and you're spec'd in your healing spec. What do you do as a healer when it comes to farming for raids or getting around in the world on a day-to-day basis? Are you generally changing your spec quite often in order to farm, or do you feel that there is an argument for simply just saving some money and staying in that spec and making the best of it?
So for most healing classes, there's the fast and the slow option. The fast option is to actually switch your spec, which is expensive. So I should say fast and expensive and slow and cheap. So fast and expensive is you leave the raid, you go back to org or wherever you're going, and you literally respec. Then you go out and, let's say you're a druid, you go out in kitty cat form and you start farming what you need to farm. The slow and inexpensive way, which is I like to do because I don't like wasting money, because you're only because you'll be respecing multiple times per week, which is not fun. So if I'll talk from the shaman perspective, that's the class I know the best. So a shaman, you're wearing intellect and spell power and healing gear while you're healing, and then when you leave, always have a secondary gear set that you can throw on with strength, agility. Maybe put a dagger and shield on, and you can still kind of be an enhancement-esque shaman while still having resto talents. It's definitely not as fast, but it's definitely doable. I actually leveled the shaman resto. It's slow, but it's definitely doable. So it all depends. Do you have a lot of money and you don't have a lot of time? Then you have to respec. If you have a lot of time and don't have a lot of money, you got to go to slow route. So that's my personal take on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, Defcamp, coming back to you and just getting on a more general question line in terms of classes now. Mm-hmm. Is it simply that, look, we've all seen it, we've all heard it, priest is the best healer in the game, that's it, case closed, end of argument?
I would not. Personally, I would not. Okay, so priests, of course, have a wide range of tools when it comes to healing. You have AoE heals, you have HOTS, you have single target heals. But then in vanilla, which is very important, is efficiency. And I would argue, right, that paladins are the most efficient healers in the game, and they can do the most effective healing in the game. Now, we talked a little bit about overhealing, right? Yes, overhealing does not count usually in the healing done aspect, but you have the effective healing that you're doing. Paladins reign supreme in effective healing because they are doing so much healing so fast that when the tank is taking damage, it's just going up, back, up, forth. And they are so efficient in their heals that personally, I would say paladins reign supreme in vanilla healing. Now, that doesn't mean that every paladin is going to be better than every priest. Doesn't mean that, and shamans reign supreme in raid healing. Shamans
chain heal.
Chain heal alone is such a powerful spell. Just spamming chain heal can get you to the top of charts. But a lot of the times you will see, priests being higher on the charts. That's because priests can be sometimes more of an effective healer because of the wide range of spells that you have that you can use. Now, don't get me wrong here. I'm pretty sure that it wasn't until later that absorbs were added to healing done. Back in vanilla, absorb I don't think counted as healing done. But when you put that into effect, and when you put into effect, they can be a very quick healer. They have HOTS as well. They have the ability to negate damage. They have raid healing in a form, not in a very efficient way, but prayer of healing is a huge party heal, can heal a whole party. And they have the wide range of healing. But when it comes to efficiency, I don't think it's as easy as that. And even druids can be great contenders as healers. I've seen druids, top charts sometimes. They have basically a whole bunch of the same rank, different ranks of the same spell. But with that, they are able to have fast heals, medium-timed heals, and very slow power heals. So in my eyes, the healing world in vanilla is pretty well balanced, honestly. I mean, druids, I would say, would be down at the bottom. Paladins, shamans, and priests all have their own, situations where they can reign supreme. But where efficiency reigns supreme, because I'm telling you, vanilla is all about timing and efficiency. In my argument, I think, personally, that paladins reign supreme when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to effective healing. Paladins can't pull through at the top.
Okay, it's interesting that you do make quite the case for paladins there, Defcamp. But now, Melderon, I'll turn to you, and again, I keep seeming to be throwing the quotes at you, Melderon, but it's just the way the cookie's crumbled so far. I've got another one for you, and this is from a Reddit user named My Absolution, and they say the following. This may be an unpopular opinion, but druids are just as good, if not better than priests in a lot of ways. It was also an unpopular opinion back then. No one paid druids any mind, and the popular opinion of the masses was that priests was the best for all healing. But most people, even back then, didn't even play a high-end game. And now you have lots of people just regurgitating what other people said 10 years later. I played a priest and a druid in vanilla. I finished half of tier 3 on my druid, and I was the top druid/healer in my guild and fourth most geared on my server. I fully believe druid is on par, if not better than priests at raid healing in many ways. It baffles me how people say druids were not good for raids. So Melderon, now that we've heard a little bit about whether priests are the best class, a little bit about paladins, where do you say the druids come into the mix?
So I will answer part of this, but I will defer to Defcamp. Defcamp knows more about druids than I do. But the problem with druids is, like Defcamp says, they kind of lack complexity in tools. They basically have one heal that they use at multiple ranks, and it's Healing Touch. So that can be very good. That can be very mana efficient if you're using the right rank in the right time. And it also can be very mana inefficient if you don't know about HPME, you don't know about downranking. So I think a very intelligent druid can be very mana efficient and very good at healing. I've also, again, I never healed as a druid, but I've also heard they're not as mana efficient when you take into account HPME as well as other classes. Another huge problem with druids is they can't, their hots don't stack. So basically, if you put a hot or healing over time spell on a target and another druid puts a healing over time spell on a target, they don't multiply, they don't stack on top of each other. They actually one will cancel the other one out. So that's kind of that is a hindrance for druids. I do think that with everything in the game, I think the player can make the difference. I do believe that if a player is well researched in his class and well researched in downranking and situational healing and when to heal, as Defcamp said, I think a druid can top the charts, absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you take on average if you take all the priests in the game and all the druids in the game, I would argue that priests would come on top. That's my personal take on it, and Defcamp may have more to say about it.
So, from where I see druids from, druids become very strong later in vanilla, and that's because I guess MP5 Spirit, they get way more efficient. They can pump up more heals. But in the beginning, when it comes to like MC, BWL, you basically see druids using, like Melderon said, all the different ranks of Healing Touch, which is it's a pretty big skill set they can have because, the really early ranks of Healing Touch are very quick, almost like a flash heal. Now, where druids start to reign supreme is where I've seen it is later in vanilla, in Encourage and in Naxxramas. It's when hots become way more effective. They become, and I've really seen druids pull out to the top of the charts in Encourage and in Naxxramas. They can be very powerful healers. And, a lot of it has to do with, I guess, how the raid damage in Nax and in Encourage, the way that resto druids can put hots on the raid as raid healers. I have seen, like I said before, they might not have the effectiveness and the skill set that priests have, where priests have so many different options to use from. But used correctly, a druid can definitely reign supreme. And now, again, it always comes down to the player, right? You can have a mediocre priest and a mediocre druid, and usually the druid will come out. The priest will come out on top. But if you have a mediocre priest and a really good druid, the druid will come out on top. And again, it has a lot to do with what tier they are using, because the later tier for druids is really good. And that is a huge part of it. And also, like I said, the effectiveness and the more mana efficient you become as your gear gets better. So, yes, druids can definitely be top contenders.
Okay, so my next question is for you, Melderon, and knowing that Defcamp has since on private servers spent a fair bit of time as a paladin healer, do you look down on particularly someone who plays a paladin healer, given that it is just the conception or misconception that it's just flash of light spam and just sitting there hitting that one button? Do you give a bit of stick to Defcamp that it's just, oh yeah, you're great at hitting flash of light, buddy, and that's it?
Yeah, I mean, as a shaman heart, as a horde by heart, I will always make fun of paladins. Paladins are my least favorite class, but it has nothing to do with I respect them as healers, though. I just don't like the archetype. But I think that even though their heals may be simple, and maybe a little spammy, let's not forget the bard aspect of a paladin, right? So the archetypical paladin is a mix between. So if we're going back to D&D, if we're going back to tabletop games, you have a bard class, right? And the bard's job is to buff the party, give them special things to make them do better. So not only are paladins healing, but they're managing buffs. So, and buffs are huge. If it wasn't for paladins and shamans, the rating scene would look a lot bleak on both sides. Paladins are a better buffer than shamans. I'll never argue that, and we'll explain why maybe later. But so there is complexity paladins deal with in addition to their spammy heals. I mean, they can also use other heals. They don't have to just use Flash of Light. But the buff rotation, you have to coordinate with other paladins who's buffing who and who's buffing what buff. So, yes, I will always give paladins shit because I'm a horde at heart. But I respect them as healers, and I do respect what they're capable of. So,
okay, now Defcamp, I'll throw this out to you. We'll stick with you, Melderon, and then Defcamp, if you disagree, I'll get you to chime in after Melderon's answer. Okay. Now, Melderon, what's for you the most fun healing class?
Oh, absolutely shaman. Because of the amount of utility they have. So you have three main heal types. You have Lesser Healing Wave, which is a fast, efficient heal. Fast and inefficient when you compare to Healing Wave. Healing Wave, which can be the most efficient depending on the rank you use, which is a slower heal. And then you have Chain Heal. The shaman's claim to fame, the reason why the horde is Chain Heal is horde. If you can, Chain Heal is everything. Chain Heal rank 1 is usually the most efficient Chain Heal when you take into bonus damage, but you can use other ranks. Healing 3 targets at a time, and selecting maybe a melee character and knowing that heal will jump to other melee units that's in his vicinity is a huge thing. Yes, Prayer of Healing, the priest spell, is a party-wide heal, but this AoE, this area of effect heal, if you will, can break party lines. So it's very huge in that situation. And then we can't the totems. Totems are the shaman's second claim to fame. There is a totem for almost every situation. And shamans are strategically put in certain groups and raids depending on the totems that they need in that group. So, for instance, you can put a shaman with other healers to drop Mana Tide totem, which is a huge increase to mana regen. You can put a shaman in a melee group and drop Strength of Earth and Wind Fury. And Wind Fury is absolutely amazing. It grants a second additional attack to any melee. So a melee target has a chance of hitting twice. And then Strength of Earth is a static increase to their strength. You have Grace of Air for hunters to increase their agility, and it also helps rogues out too. You have resistance totems to drop down for fire and flint and fire and ice and cold resistance. You have totems that remove diseases. They have totems that remove poisons. The totem is amazing. And the only thing that makes totems not the most powerful buffs in the game is because they're only party-wide. So paladins can buff anyone in the raid. Sorry, and within their range. So yeah, you have to be within the range of the totems for it to work. But to me, all those things coming together makes shamans to me the most diverse healers in the game. And that to me is diversity equals fun to me.
And Defcamp, just focusing on that keyword of fun. You've obviously played a few different healing classes now. What is the most fun to you? I'm probably picking that you disagree with Melderon on the shaman side of things.
Well, I don't disagree with the fact that shamans have a lot to offer. But I really don't see totems as fun for me. I see them kind of as more of like a pain in the ass. I don't know why. But I can see how someone would see that because shamans have a ton to offer.
I think it's fair to say that a totem probably would be a pain in the ass, yes.
Yeah, I mean, especially the quest to get them. And
depends how you put it in.
Yeah, it depends. Especially the Tarn ones with the big things on the side. Yeah, that would that'd be a little rough. But so when it comes to fun, I do think paladins can be fun healers. I really do. Yes, they might be a little spammy. Yes, they might be, but I think it's fun in the aspect of the quickness. But when I think of a fun healer, I mean, I'm going priest. I think priests, when it comes to fun, being able to, throw a bubble on somebody, to be able to throw a hot, to have so many different skill sets, and you have, your buffs as well. You have your prayer fortitude, spirit, shadow protection. But for me, when it comes to fun, I do think paladins can be fun. But for the most fun, I have to say priest because of all the different ways that you can heal, all the different situations you can think of, and it makes you think, and you have to think, oh, well, I can do this here, but this will be more efficient. But I can also do this, but that would be more efficient, but this would be would get the heals out quicker. So you have a lot to work with. I feel like you have a lot to offer, and I feel like there's so many different ways to go about that one. You only have to do this one thing, but you have so many different ways to go about it, and I think that is fun. So I'm going to say priest.
And Defcamp, we'll stick with you for this one. When we talk about priests that you've just mentioned, and obviously you have a little bit of experience there as well, what do you have to say? And keeping in mind that, yes, we do put forward the overarching principle that it is, World of Warcraft very much so is, play what you want, play what makes you happy. But with keeping that in mind, what do you say to people who are basically like, well, is it mandatory that I have to play a dwarf priest? Like, if I really want to achieve the most, and appreciating that I might not want to be a min-maxer, but if I want to have a good time, should I just be a dwarf if I'm rolling Alliance?
Absolutely not. I think dwarf, by default, has the best racials by far. I mean, Fear Ward, the fact that Fear Ward's a racial is kind of unfair, but if I wanted to just be efficient, min-max and all that, then of course I would play dwarf. But, I personally, I like dwarf. I do. If I was Alliance, I probably would play dwarf, not just because of the fact of Fear Ward, but I love Stoneform as well, and I think that they look cool. I do. I love dwarfs. But, if I wanted to min-max, so I probably would play Troll because Troll can, with Berserker, push out more HBS. But I am all about playing what you feel. I love the undead. I love the lore behind the undead. I love everything about them. I love the way they look. I will be the first one to say, if you want to play Rep Paladin, play a Rep Paladin. If you want to play a Balanced Druid, play a Balanced Druid, and be the best Balanced Druid you can. Because yeah, it's been a meme, it's been a joke, but guess what? There are some people out there who can show you differently. Classes have been, of course they won't be doing like DPS like a warrior or rogue or a mage, but you have other things to offer to the table. No matter what your race is or what your class is, you have other things to offer, not just your heals per second, not just your DPS, and that what I always try to remember, and always this is an experience. It's a game, but it is an experience, and you should experience it the way you want to do it, not what someone thinks that you should do. So play what you like, play what you feel, and be happy with it.
Melderon, is it the case? I think you said earlier you leveled once as a resto shaman. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, when you did that, were you under duress or something from Defcamp? Please just tap your microphone twice if Defcamp is forcing you to be here right now.
No. I did it as a meme spec. I'm the thing is, vanilla for me is, and honestly, there's like 7 different ways you can level shaman. But like, I wanted to do it to say that I did it. And basically, and I made a video about it. It's called the Resto Shaman Leveling Guide. Basically, and I go right out in front and say, you will not beat any other spec to level cap. You won't. But if you like healing like I do, and if you like doing dungeons like I do, it's awesome because your heals are more efficient. They heal for more. You have all of the benefits. You have Nature Swiftness, so you get instant cast heals. You get Ancestral Fortitude, so every time you crit, your target's 25% increased armor, You have your Mana Spring and your Healing Spring totems heal and give mana back for more. All these really cool things that while you're leveling can also have an effect. So if you're killing a mob, you may not have the damage output, but you can put an instant cast heal on yourself. Or you can you drop Mana Tide, so you don't have to drink. So there are ways you can kind of finagle it so you can level with it. And again, I will say to anyone who's actually interested in doing it, you will not level faster than Enhancement Shaman. You will not level faster than Elemental Shaman. But you can say at the end of the day, I leveled Restoration. And that's kind of the way that's what I wanted to do. But yeah, if you're into healing, if you're into doing dungeons, I did a lot of dungeons, obviously. That isn't the fastest way to level. We could talk about speed leveling at some point if you wanted to. But dungeons are not very fast, even if you have all the quests. But they are really, really fun. I love group content, so that's why I did it.
And I also am leveling my Paladin as Holt. And I love it. I'm also leveling with Melderon, though, and it helps a lot. He's leveling as Prot. And,
this is a different character. These are different characters.
Yeah, these are different characters, of course. But, to be able to heal as efficiently as I can when we need to, when I have to, and still be able to do out a decent amount of damage. I usually beat Melderon in DPS, even though he's a tank. He doesn't do that much DPS. But as I have a healing set and I have a DPS set. I put the DPS set on when I'm DPSing. Of course, I don't do as much damage as a Rep Paladin would, but you know what? I get the job done, and I love it, and I'm having fun doing it.
So, Melderon, you mentioned that it is somewhat of a badge of honor to level as a meme spec in a way, and now that we know that you've leveled as a Resto Shaman, is it the case that you walk around with a little pin on your lapel, like instead of the American flag, you've got the healing wave graphic, and people ask, where'd you get that one? Well, leveled as a Resto Shaman, not a big deal, whatever.
Just leveled as a Resto Shaman.
All right.
It's a really good pickup line at the bars.
Make sure to tell everybody when you can.
I'll bet the ladies love it. Oh, Resto Shaman. Hey, Shirley, get over here. We're going home with this guy.
Yeah, I'm getting my PhD, but did I tell you I leveled as a Resto Shaman?
All right. Now, Defcamp, we're going to go through a few pet peeves. And I appreciate that, obviously, I've got the anger management section at the end of the show that I'm sure you guys are looking forward to teeing off on there. But just a bit more generally, just we're going through all the roles. What is your biggest pet peeve with DPS people in raids or instances or what have you? What do they frequently fuck up or get wrong that gives you the shits?
Okay. As far as DPS, you have one friggin' job, okay? And that is to do damage, okay? Do damage. That's what you're supposed to do. But stay out of the friggin' mechanics, okay? If you see fire on the ground, move. You see a mechanic, something on the floor, move out of the friggin' way. Okay, I'm a healer. Yeah, I can heal you, but I'm not going to heal you if you're an idiot. And I have let people die before, and I will let you die if you're an idiot. When someone stands in mechanic and sits there and then says, "Oh, heals, where's the heals? Where's the heals?" I will call you out on it, and I will make you look like a fool, the fool that you are. So please don't stand in mechanics, okay? Hey guys, don't be stupid, okay? You know.
Well, the thing is, you can stand in mechanics, but don't blame the healer for dying.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and that's a huge
everybody makes mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but just
everybody makes mistakes. Exactly. Yeah. And when you blame the healer for a mistake that was obviously yours, and it happens all the time. It really does. Also a big pet peeve for me is, of course in vanilla you see it a lot but when someone clearly could run back and running back is quicker, but calls for me to res them, even though like I'm all the way across the map and won't release, that is a huge pet peeve. I hate when people do that. Just friggin' release and run back. If it's closer, I understand if it's not, and I'm there, I'll res you, of course. Warlocks, especially in BC. Oh my God. Buy some friggin' food instead of friggin' health tapping all the time, okay? Buy some food and eat it, or buy some water, and don't always expect, because like there's times where warlocks will just keep on health tapping, boom, life tapping, and I'm trying to heal a tank, and they're like about to die, and then they're sitting there in some freaking mechanic about to die. You know what I mean? Why'd you freaking life tap if you're gonna go out and fight? I hate that. That's a pet peeve as well. Warlocks piss me off. Those are the three at the top of my head. Yeah.
And Melderon, when we talk about, the joke of standing in the fire, blah, 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 generally for you, how many deaths by fire would you tolerate before you realize someone is clearly just not trying?
I'd say 5. And I think that's
wow.
I think that's probably a little bit too much. I give a lot of people the benefit of the doubt because I know, like, for me, what's that?
I said you used to raid lead, so you had to be kind of nice.
And you have to be kind of like, all right, guys, let's talk about this again. And I think some people just don't multitask as well as other people, and that's totally okay. As a man, I can say I'm a very poor multitasker. I feel like women do a much better job in general, and I think women are very, very good raiders for that reason. Even though there's not many women raiders, but there should be. But it's like I will try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I definitely will. I don't like leaving groups, especially in Classic, because it took so hard to get there. I don't want to leave a group and try to get another group again. Mm-hmm. I think that 5 is a magic number. I think it's like, all right, dude, you're getting kicked, or I'm leaving the group. Usually I leave the group because I don't, as a healer, you usually aren't the group leader. So,
Defcamp, I'll ask you this. You mentioned earlier that, sometimes if they're standing in the fire, they should realize that, the healers won't necessarily be paying attention to them and they're probably going to die anyway. But do you sometimes find that people will quickly learn from their mistakes if you do ignore them a little? I mean, let's say they jump in the fire and then they take a little while to get out. Do you do things with your heals to teach people, is I guess what I'm trying to say?
Sometimes. I often have done, I can be the asshole who will watch someone's in the mechanic and just purposely not heal him. And then I'll say, you were standing in the mechanic, that's why I didn't heal you. Basically, not heal them, so not use a heal to teach them. But also, there are things that, for me, it's all about, sometimes you just got to be patient. And, but it was pretty cool when I forgot when priests got, what is it called? Leap of, when you actually can pull the person to you. So you see somebody standing in a mechanic and you can it's called leap of faith, I think, and you can actually pull them to you. That was pretty cool. I wish I had that in vanilla sometimes. For the most part, I'll let you die if you're standing in a mechanic. And, but if you're actively trying and I see that you're doing something and maybe, I will, do my best to keep you alive, put a bubble on you, but I'm not going to sit there and babysit you and make sure that you stay alive if it's something that you could be doing for yourself.
Okay. Now, Defcamp, to stick with you, what was we talked about your biggest pet peeve with DPS. Actually, no, sorry. How about this? Melderon, you can absolutely do this one for me. What was your biggest pet peeve with tanks?
Pulling too much and not letting me drink. Those are the two things that I think. Well, yeah, I know. Jeff Camp's going to laugh because I did it to him all the time. But I did it because he's my brother, okay? Hold on.
Let me me all the time, Josh. All the time, okay?
I do it because I know he can handle it. But anyway, I think that the worst thing you can do as a tank, and I can say this as a tank, and I've learned this, always look at your healer's mana pool before you pull. Mm-hmm. Always. If your healer has less than 50% mana, just double check with him and make sure he's okay. Usually 50% is fine. If he's less than 25%, just stop and say, "Do drink." Because, and if in vanilla, do not pull to more than one pack. If you're pulling more than 5 mobs, you're probably going to wipe. That isn't the case universally, but that's definitely the case usually. So don't pull too much. Use your gun if you're a warrior. Use your bow. Don't walk up to a mob and expect you're going to pull just one pack. That isn't. Always make sure you have a gun or a bow if you're a tank. If you're a druid, you don't have to worry about that. If you're a paladin, you don't have to worry about that either, because you have fairy fire and paladins have judgment or something, some kind of ranged. I'm not really sure, but and let your healer drink. Those are the two things, definitely.
And back to you, Defcamp. What's your biggest pet peeve with other healers?
That's a good one. Buffing can be a huge issue at times when you're trying to get the buffs right, especially as like a paladin, and the other healers are just not listening to you and doing the wrong buffs. Also, a huge pet peeve for me is other healers tend to try to snipe heals a lot, and this is more recent, I guess, is because back in the day you didn't have too many cooldowns as a healer. Maybe power infusion if you're a disc priest, but stacking cooldowns on top of each other. Oh my god! Purposely, like when you guys have your cooldown set. Okay, I'm going to use I'm going to use Tranquility as a druid, right? And then the paladin uses Aura Mastery at the same time. That's a huge pet peeve for me. I know that's more recent, not so much vanilla, but that really gets on my nerves. I had a lot of experience raiding Mythic recently in Legion, and when that would happen, that could right there could just be that could wipe the raid, not having your cooldown when you're supposed to use it. Also, as a healer, sometimes I feel like there's been times where I feel like, what the hell is everybody else doing? And I'll sit there and I'll see somebody, just like either sitting there not doing anything or healing someone that they're not supposed to be healing. Basically, usually in raids you're assigned, what you're supposed to be doing. If you're going to be tank healing, if with tank you're going to be healing. When someone goes and does what they're not supposed to do, and because of that, either tank dies or something else happens. So that's a huge pet peeve for me.
Okay, now Melderon, this a relatively important one that we haven't really touched on yet. What can you tell us, and this might be a bit more pertinent to you given that you have played a shaman, what can you tell us about when people need to keep in mind the following? Positioning.
Okay, so positioning, most Blizzard mechanics are dealing with positioning, okay? Later in the game, a lot of different mechanics came out with, buffs and debuffs and this and that, but most of the core vanilla mechanics are all about positioning. So let's just get that out of the way first. If you're doing a raid, if you're doing a dungeon, your position are very, very important. If you're a shaman, your totems have a radius that they work. If you don't have totemic mastery, your range is, I think it's only 20 yards, maybe 15. If you have totemic mastery, it's up to 30 yards. So you have to make sure you place your totems in the right place. Very, very important. If you don't put if you put your mana tide too far away from another healer, they're not going to benefit from that mana tide. You could cause a wipe. Your chain heals. If you're chain healing a target that's not near other targets, you just wasted a chain heal. It won't bounce. So if you chain heal someone and they're not within a radius of other players, you just wasted a heal, like I just said. Sorry. So that's another important thing. So I think for Shaman specifically, totems and chain heal are very, very dependent upon your placement. And then we have mechanics as well. But essentially from that, I think healers suffer the least from positioning when you don't count those things. Because remember, healers can heal without looking at the target. You can be turned away from the person you're healing and still heal them. Which a lot of people may not even think about. But if you're a mage, you have to face the target to use your frostbolt. You have to, as a healer, you can stand anywhere and jump around, and it doesn't really matter. But if you're a shaman specifically, positioning is huge, absolutely huge. I think more than any other healer, in my opinion.
And Defcamp. Moving on from that, is there anything outside of being a shaman for other classes? Is there anything to add that you should keep in mind about positioning?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of fights where positioning is, I'm thinking of like Cthulhu right now. Like the positioning in Cthulhu is, I mean, that is the fight basically. There are a lot of mechanics that if you don't, you have to be either a certain far apart from each other. Someone is in range and you by a chain lightning ability. I mean, that could be death right there. There's a lot of positioning is huge in vanilla. Whether it's getting positioned behind a pillar or something to get away from a fear, or whether it's positioning yourself close enough so as a healer to be able to reach the tank, the ranged DPS. There's a lot of fights like the Four Horsemen in positioning there. You're trying to get as many people in your range as you can as a healer. And also as melee, positioning is very important. You want to make sure that depending on the fight, what you're doing, you want to make sure that you're optimizing your DPS by trying to be behind the boss as a melee, and also making sure that you're in your right spot. Like in Cthulhu, I mean, of course, it's giant friggin' tentacles and shit, but you got to make sure that you are in your right position, and you have to move and constantly change positions, things like that. So to me, positioning is probably one of the most key things that you have to kind of be aware of in vanilla.
Yeah, and one thing, like you said about range, another thing real quick is that if you're a DPS, you're a tank, sometimes the healer wants to heal you, but you ran too far out of their range, or you LOS them. Very, very important. There's a lot of places, like a lot of dungeons, where if you run behind a wall, you may have just killed yourself because the healer can't get to you. Or if you're really running gung-ho and fighting a mob, the healer may be trying as hard as he can to heal you, but you just outranged him. Mm-hmm. So that's another huge thing.
Yeah, that's huge. Thank you.
Okay, so there's some great information in there. The one thing that I plucked out, however, was that as the rear commander, sometimes I want to be behind the boss. Is that right?
So a good tank should always turn the boss so that frontal cone mechanics don't hit anyone else.
Okay.
Right, yes. Depending on the boss. Yeah.
But it depends on it's totally boss specific. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I'll throw this one out to the crowd, basically. First in, best dressed. And this is about add-ons. What do you guys think about HealBot? Is it absolutely mandatory? What does it do, and why should people have it?
Absolutely not. I don't feel HealBot. Basically, you can totally do without it. I feel so. I feel personally that just rayframes for me and having my my macros and my keybinds is perfectly fine enough. I don't need to have things like HealBot will put it to your left click or your right click, things like that you can assign to Bubble. It also does some raid frames, things like that. But to me, in order to be as efficient as I can, I need to feel comfortable with what I am doing. Some people might feel comfortable with HealBot and that style of healing, and that's fine. Personally, myself, I do not feel comfortable with HealBot. I feel like it's a little clunky for me. I don't know. Personally, I like to have everything the way I've always done my keybinds in a specific way that I've always done, and I like it like that. So for me, I just need a good raid frame add-on. I need a good timer add-on, so I can have my HOTS timed out. I can have things like that timed, and that's about it. I mean, a boss DBM or big wigs type add-on is always good to have. But I try to be, especially when Classic comes out, I'm going to try to be as minimalistic as possible. I don't want to have too many add-ons. I feel that HealBot is almost like not some people have called it like a crutch or training wheels. I don't really feel that way. I mean, it's, technically it's just, being able to be a little bit quicker with, clicking on your mouse or anything like that. But you can do the same thing with keybinds if you feel it. So I don't feel like it's necessary.
Now, Melderon, do you know anything about? I literally only just found out about this yesterday, and you guys might have known about this for years. How do you feel about add-ons that allow you to make mouse over heels?
So HealBot actually lets you do that. That's one of the things in HealBot. I personally don't use them. I find the mechanical clicking very affirmative for me. That might seem very weird for people who use mouse over. I think Defcamp may use some mouse over. I'm not sure if he does or not anymore.
Only in PvP. I feel like mouse over is only good for me in PvP. But in raiding with my frames is fine.
Yeah, so there is a way to do it in HealBot. The newer HealBot for retail I'm talking about now. I don't know about Classic. But in Classic, the only thing I use is Luna unit frames. It is spectacular. I don't know if it's going to be available when Classic comes out, if they change the way that the coding is done. I forget the word for that. But anyway, but Luna unit frames on private servers is spectacular. It's a spectacular add-on.
Were you meaning the API before? Is that what you're trying to think of?
Yes, that's the word. Thank you very much. If they change the API, then it's going to be Luna may not be able to work on Classic, so that's going to be a downer. But
well, I'm operating off of the presumption that basically all add-ons will be broken and everything will have to be remade. No, I mean that might be incredibly easy to do, but I'm guessing the Classic is going to launch with no ready-to-go add-ons, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to happen as well. Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
Oh yeah, me too, absolutely. Now, at Defcamp, we talked before briefly about overhealing and charts and sort of some of the back and forth between healers about the charts. Yeah. Do you find that, we have that DPS race. Everyone wants to be number one deeps, man. It's so cool. Do you get the same level of competition with healers or not so much? Sometimes,
more so I feel, recently, I guess, in the newer expansions. In older expansions, not so much. I feel like, some people may have been limited to gear, and that's obvious. Or some people were limited to the class, and that's, obvious sometimes. And it's not as much. Usually, it's not surprising to see so-and-so on top of the charts, or this person. Usually, it's the same person of the same class. In vanilla, I mean, yeah, it's something to feel cool about, but it's nowhere I don't feel it's as much as the DPS mentality is to be on top. I don't feel like it's at that level. It can be for some people, not for me.
Basically, I think if no one died at the end of the day, you do your job.
Yeah. Or you cleared the boss, right? You killed the boss, you did your job.
Right, and no one died or like minimal people died. I think that's the most important thing as a healer. Yes, there are situations where especially in like LFR and retail, where healers just don't heal because they don't need to heal. But that's usually not the case in most situations in Classic. So I think that's praise enough. Is that no one?
And there's also other things to doing than just healing. Like you may be dispelling, doing a lot of dispels. You may be cleansing poisons, and depending on the fight, having the most dispels might be better than having the healing per second. So depending on the fight and what you're doing and what the mechanics are, healing per second can sometimes be secondary or not even, or tertiary, might not even be the main thing. So.
Now, Defcamp, I'll stick with you for this one. Have you found in the past that, and Melderon has described you as, a skilled healer. You've got a lot of experience with the role. Have you found that despite your experience and skill at the role, there've still been instances where you have been chastised by a raid? And what would you say to people who might be a little bit afraid of the pressure of playing a healer because of fear of chastisement?
I myself have never really been chastised too bad in a raid. I feel like most of the time, I really don't feel like I've been in that situation. I'm not trying to say that it's not. I mean, I don't see myself as that. There's healers out there who are way better than me. I decent, whatever. But I never feel like I was kind of called out like that. And if I was someone who is new to the game and is afraid of that, I would say don't worry about that at all. Because for the most part, healers tend to look out for each other. And unless you're doing something completely wrong or being a complete ass or just doing something stupid, for the most part, healers are pretty cool with each other. We're not going to call each other out. Of course, DPS might have something else to say, but for the most part, I can't really. I've never had that experience so much myself where I was kind of chastised like that. I have seen it, however. I have seen it happen, but usually in times where the healer was just basically, either trolling by just doing something stupid or just not sitting there doing nothing. Most of the time, if you're putting effort in, people will see it. As long as you're putting your effort, you're doing as much as you can, you're doing, what you can, people see that. It also depends on the guild you're in. I've luckily been in very good guilds and very nice people. So,
okay. Now,
practice makes perfect. That's all. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Honestly,
absolutely. Now, Melderon, what would you say is the toughest dungeon to heal in the game?
Oh, of all expansions or vanilla?
Let's say vanilla.
The toughest dungeon to heal. I think Stratholme is pretty tough. If we're talking 5-mans,
yeah,
Stratholme's pretty tough, and so is LBRS. I think the problem with Stratholme is that you really your tank needs to be pretty geared. A lot of damage comes out in Strat. I think I'm sure if you go on the Light's Hope right now, if you go on the Lightbringer right now, people are running through Stratholme like it's a joke, but they're doing it in max gear. But when you first hit 60 or 58 or 59 doing Strat, it's a tough dungeon to heal. There's a lot going on. You have those ghosts that Eye of Naxxramas that pop out of nowhere, and that's not fun because those things they summon gargoyles, and if you don't kill them fast enough, they just summon waves of gargoyles. There's a gauntlet at the end of Stratholme with the abominations, and that's not fun because you have very limited time to drink. And then Baron Rivendare is not fun either, even for gear tanks. So I think Strat would probably be my top. Maybe LBRS is right below that. Ubers is, of course, a 10-man, so I consider that a raid. But
there's even some parts in BRD when you're not – I'm thinking not at 60, but like at – I remember doing like BRD at like level 50-something. And, that room with fire and keeping up with the constant damage, that can be a pain in the ass. But I agree with Melderon. It also depends, I think, on what class you are, and there's certain – different encounters that are harder for different classes.
Well, Defcamp, I'll same question, different context. What do you think is the toughest raid to heal in the game?
Oh, well, in the game completely?
Sorry, in vanilla again, I should say.
So I haven't done too much raid healing in vanilla, but I would have to defer and say, I would have to say Nax, just by complete difficulty level and complete, just the madness that goes on in a place. I mean, a boss like I love this boss and I love doing it in Wrath, but Patchwork, that constant and being a tank healer, that constant damage going on in the tank. Oh, I loved it, and I felt like that's a place where a healer can really shine. So definitely Nax, even though my experience has been very limited.
Okay.
Yeah, our experience with Nax has been Wrath.
Sure.
So that's a little bit easier.
Sure, absolutely. Me too. Okay. Now, which one of you two who wants to put their hands up as the PvP guru of the two of you? Who's done the most of it?
As far as damage or healing? As far as healing, Defcamp, definitely.
Defcamp. Okay,
Yeah,
Defcamp.
I PvP'd basically. I mean, I got up to really pretty high rating in BC. I played Disc. And I also played Shadow in Arena, and I also played my Rogue in Arena as well. Got up to 2,500, I think, at some point.
Okay.
2v2. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll start with you, Defcamp, and Melderon, if you've got anything to add afterwards, feel free to chime in. But in terms of PvP healing or playing as a healing class in PvP, how does that make you feel? Do you enjoy it? And what kind of tips and tricks would you give to people who might consider it?
I love it. I think that it is one of the, for me, especially in the Burning Crusade in Arena, it's got to be one of the most thrilling experiences that I've had. PvP in Vanilla is a lot different. Especially as a healer, you tend to, as a priest, it can be a little tricky. I mean, as a disc, it's, okay. But I think once the Burning Crusade rolls around, you really see healers shine, especially in the arena. I mean, in Vanilla, I would say that priests can definitely be, pretty strong. So can druids, shamans, holy paladins make for great healers in PvP. You're going to be targeted a lot. That's the issue as a healer. You are going to be targeted a lot. So you have to kind of play defensively. Don't run into the middle of the fight.
Yes.
Do not run in there like a DPS and be like, oh, look at me, I'm here. You're going to get devoured. Try to be a little sneaky. If you're a priest, try to stay to the side, put some shields on some people, put some renews out, and basically, play defensively. If you get a rogue on you, fear them. Try to get your DPS to help you. Now, when it comes to the Burning Crusade, which is where my experience in Arena really got, I played a lot of Arena. As a disc priest in PvP in the Burning Crusade, I felt like a tank. I had stacked resilience. Messing around with like reflective shield, and people just pound on you, and you watch their health go away. In the Burning Crusade, I feel like healers had definitely a stronger presence than they did in Vanilla, and they were a force to be reckoned with. Especially in the arena, like I said, a disc priest, you're going against another healer, you can just basically burn their mana down and sit there and just watch them cry. So. It's definitely in Vanilla, you got to be defensive, and on forward into the other expansions, I think PvPing as a healer is a lot of fun. And if you've never tried it, give it a shot because it's a lot of fun.
I just want to add, there's a huge difference between PvE and PvP. Everyone knows that, right? So when you go into a dungeon, you're DPSing, you stand in a certain position unless you have to respond to a mechanic, and you go through your rotation. PvP is not like that, right? So there's so much room for stochastic randomness. So you have people running around doing whatever they want to do. And as a healer, if you're coming from PvE, you're used to standing in a certain position and just spamming heals and then moving and then spamming heals. In PvP, the monster's coming after you. So it's usually the tank's dealing with the monster. Now you are the target. And it's a very, like Defcamp said, it's a very different situation. The amount of randomness is so much higher in PvP. You have to be reactive. So, like Defcamp said, you want to stay at max range, but that's difficult for a lot of healing classes, especially shamans. Shaman have to throw down totems. In order to do that, they have to go in the range they have to go into some dangerous waters. So it's a very different animal, and you have to be on your guard. And you have to look behind your shoulder, and you have to try to stay in the back in the shadows as much as you possibly can, because you're pretty squishy too, usually, depending on the class.
Okay, now, question for the crowd, first one in. I forgot to ask before, is there one encounter in the game, one boss, that you roll your eyes and go, oh, fuck, here we go, that you really don't look forward to as a healer?
Let me think about that for a second. Oh, Loetheb. From Next.
Oh yeah, that could be a pain. Yeah, definitely.
So Loetheb does a debuff where it reduces all healing for a certain amount of time. Yeah. I didn't personally heal that; I tanked it, but Defcamp did.
That was a pain. Yeah. I gotta say, honestly, Josh, there have been some fights that I've kind of as a healer been like, this is horrible, but at the end of the day. When it's a challenge and I get through with it and I complete the boss, it kind of changes my perspective as when we were stuck on it. I just remember I'm going to say Gul'dan in the Night. The hell was the name of that friggin'
Nighthold?
The Nighthold, yeah, whatever it was held in Legion. That fight. I mean, just because dealing with this is on Mythic, dealing with the people in your group. I think that was the most frustrating thing. I got to say, the more fights, the recent ones, especially in like Tomb of Sargeras, that kind of thing, those are the ones that I really roll my eyes at. Less so in vanilla, less so in BC. Even though they were difficult when I played them then, looking in comparison to the newer ones, especially like in Tomb of Sargeras, you had the Avatar of Sargeras. That fight probably has my biggest eye roll ever. It's a lot of, one person does something wrong and the whole raid is punished. That is probably, my biggest eye roll.
Yeah, but as far as healing is concerned, I kind of enjoy the variety of what Blizzard has thrown healers in the past, and I think that there are fights that, of course, aren't healer friendly, but they're not healer friendly for a reason, and they make you rethink your strategy. I think that's good.
Yeah.
Now, last one from me, and then a few listener questions, and then the fun stuff, guys. And you've done so well, and as I've probably been obvious, I'm going to have to split this one up into two parts because it's been such a fantastic, lengthy chat. Now, last one from me. And again, question for the crowd. First one in. Would you suggest that everyone who is serious about World of Warcraft give healers a try to at least realize what it's like in that role?
Absolutely.
I think at some point in your WoW career, you have to try the other things, tanking included. I think in order to understand the wholeness of group content, you have to understand every point, every perspective. Definitely.
Yeah. If you have played as a DPS your entire time or as a tank, there is a whole nother world out there waiting for you to explore. I'm serious. Healing is its own animal, it's its own thing, and it is so much different than DPS. And if you've never tried it and you're looking for something fresh, you're maybe a little bored, you are sick of playing a DPS, give it a shot. You really might like it. You can level up most classes as a DPS, Priest of Shadow, and go to healer when you hit max level or at 60, depending on what version of WoW you're playing. But I got to say, each class has its own really cool, niche, and play what you think you feel closest to and give it a shot. It's definitely worth it.
Okay, now I've got a few listener questions for you guys, and we'll start with listener GR, who asked the following. As a fresh level 60 going into Molten Core and Blackwing Lair, what's the single best piece of advice you'd give to improve your position on the healing meters? Defcamp, how about you?
So the best, and then this is as any class basically, right? So this isn't specific to class?
This is as a healer.
Okay. As a healer going into MC, the main thing that you want to remember and go in there with the idea of, I have to, and like I said before, timing and efficiency is everything. You want to not go in there and try to burn your mana within the first minute, because those fights they're longer fights. You have to bring consumables with you. That's another thing. Bring consumables. That is going to help you out big time. I'm talking mana pots. I'm talking oil. I'm talking flasks. I'm talking everything you can get your hands on. Bring it with you because you're going to need it. Also, when you're in the middle of a fight, remember to sit there and stop casting for a little bit to get your mana back up. You want to get as much mana regen when you can. When you see a break in the fight, take your time and make sure that you're getting as much as your mana, as your spirit and your MP5 as you can without, letting someone die. But I gotta say, as especially someone who is, maybe not that geared, and depending on what your class is or whatever, you definitely want to make sure you have consumables. I cannot stress that enough. Also, don't worry about trying to top the meters. Don't worry about trying to, be the on the top, because that in end is just you're gonna end up wasting your mana, and you're gonna be sitting there through the rest of the fight trying to catch up, and that right there could cause your raid to wipe, because if you go out of mana too quick and your job is supposed to be healing a tank and that tank goes down and you don't have a B-res or something like that, that's a wipe. So remember to be efficient and remember to take your time.
Okay, Melderon, I'll ask you this next one. And this comes from a listener of the show and a Countdown Council member, Seven Winters, who's actually got a couple, but we'll start with this one. And we touched on this earlier, but I just want to know what personally you do. He says, what tips do you have for to combat staring at raid frames the whole fight and missing the actual fight going on? I like to move my raid frames towards the center of my screen so I don't have to look back and forth. Now, what do you do with your raid frames or your dungeon frames?
That's actually so I put it right above my action bars. So you're actually looking in the center of the screen at all times, pretty much. It does make it so if you're recording, if you're a YouTuber like me, it does make it a lot uglier. But at the end of the day, if you're in a raid, you shouldn't be in the raid to record. You should be in the raid to help other people in the raid. So if you put your raid frames in a central position, right below your character, perhaps, you will never really miss anything. I mean, you're not going to see all of what's happening, but nobody really does. Okay, even DPS. DPS are just staring in this. The DPS are just making sure the numbers are coming up. And then tanks are just making sure that their rage is up, and then their aggro's up, right? So that nobody really sees the whole thing. So I wouldn't really get down on yourself about that. But I will say that, yes, putting your raid frames in there is definitely important. Also, if, like, and Defcamp touched upon this, if no healing needs to be put out, don't put out heals. And take that time to just look around the room for a second. You won't be healed. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. There's a command you can put in vanilla,
max camera distance.
Max camera distance 5. You want to make sure you can zoom out as much as you can to get that entire view distance in and to see everything. I'm sorry, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, always zoom out as far as you can, definitely. Yeah, I would definitely say that as well. Don't zoom in because you're going to miss a whole bunch of stuff. And that goes with everything. That goes with questing. You're not going to see some guy ganking you if you're zoomed all the way in. So.
Right, not like when I played League of Legends for the first time and zoomed in as much as I could and didn't understand why my friends were laughing at me so much. Okay, now next one, back to you, Defcamp. This comes from listener Nostalgia Dad, who asked this: how necessary do you think tailoring is for a healer if there are other if there are other viable options besides True Faith vestments?
Okay, so tailoring is very nice. I would say tailoring is way more important in the Crusade, personally. I feel like tailoring is not as great as it is in vanilla as it is in the Burning Crusade. I personally, as a priest, always do tailoring in the Burning Crusade because the Mooncloth set is just amazing. Now, personally, as I know a lot of healers to go alchemy, because of consumables and because of, alchemy is just a really great profession to have, especially in vanilla. But personally, I wouldn't let any profession try to, I wouldn't say, if someone says, you got to do tailoring, you're going to get the best set, you're going to have this, honestly, you can get a lot of pre-raid BIS that are very comparable to what you can make in tailoring. You can do, you can get your gear pretty quick through doing dungeons, through doing raids. That tailoring, especially in vanilla, I don't think is as important as it is in the Burning Crusade. Personally, that's the way I feel. I would go with what you like, what profession you like. If you like to do, alchemy, if you like to do enchanting, tailoring, do it. If you want to do enchanting mining to get some money, do it. Personally, go with what you like. That's how I'm always going to play it. If I like, enchanting and say skinning, that's what I'm going to do to make money. I wouldn't say that the gear, you can always get gear, and as a healer, you're going to come across gear pretty good, regularly, especially in like 5-man content. It's not that bad to get geared. So don't let that control you.
Okay, second last listener question for you, Melderon, and this again comes from Countdown Council member Seven Winters, who asked this. I really enjoyed in vanilla how big of a role mana management played in healing, but I think in Classic, with players generally playing better and having more resources available to them, fights will be much shorter, resulting in less importance on conserving mana. Do you think this is a valid concern, and will healing in Classic be any different than healing was in vanilla?
It's usually guild dependent. I think that if you're in a guild that is a min-maxing guild that knows exactly what they need to do for every second of every fight, you're not going to heal as much, and therefore you won't need to be as mana efficient. I would personally, if I was in a guild like that, I would still use my HPME guidelines. I would still use the most mana efficient spell just in case. But yeah, there are going to be guilds that when Classic comes out that are going to roll through the content a week after the stuff comes out. But the vast majority of players, and I'll stand by this, the vast majority of players are going to be new players, I think, and they're going to be players that have returning to the game and are not going to know how to do all this stuff. Even if there's the stuff available online. We've had a lot of interviewees on Def Talk that have said the same thing. Just because something online doesn't mean someone's going to read it. And I think that it's always good to always be prepared and always use the most mana-efficient healing rotation, quote-unquote rotation, you can possibly use in every scenario. I think that raids are going to be – there's going to be such a huge variance in raid performance when Classic comes out. And there's a huge variance in raid performance now in private servers. I mean, yeah, we hear a lot about really good raids, really good guilds, but there are guilds that are just mediocre and average, and that's okay. I would probably consider myself an average. I wouldn't consider myself a min-maxer or someone who's top of the line. So,
okay. Now, last listener question for you, Defcamp, and this comes from listener of the show, Disapulo. And they say this. Talking about healing, MP5, let me rephrase. When we're talking about healing, talk about MP5 and what made it special in vanilla compared to other forms of regen in later expansions.
So I just want to say, shouts out to Discipulo. He's a good friend of the guild. And, I know he's been an awesome part of our guild. So,
well, can I just jump in? He wanted me to say to you as well, I was going to save this to the end, Metal Militia for life. Is that right?
Yep. So MP5 in vanilla. So when we look at MP5, and as a priest, of course, this is something that is not as good as it's for you, because you get spirit basically from spirit gives you also bonus healing with talents. So because spirit also increases the priest healing, whereas paladins and shamans only get more from regen hardly. But spirit is, so this is more to be 100% clear. Spirit determines the speed at which your mana regenerates. When you cast a spell, your mana stops regenerating for the next 5 seconds. So it's true for every class with mana in the entire game. Priests, druids, mages, they have talents and skills that allow some percentage of their mana to regen to occur within 5 seconds of casting a spell. This means that the extra spirit for those classes increase their mana regeneration all the time. In addition to providing other benefits, in the case of like priests and druids, NP5, on the other hand, provides some other bonuses for all classes with mana, but it's generally considered to be the stat for shamans and paladins because spirit provides very little bonus for them. Spirit provides more bonus to priests and druids. MP5 provides the same bonus for everyone, so it's usually considered more for a shaman and paladin stat since they receive no bonus from spirit. And, a big thing with the 5-second rule back in the day in vanilla, which was different than what we saw basically in the beginning of vanilla when you first cast that spell, and when that spell was done casting, that is when it took the time from the regen to start. So that 5 second would start at the end of that cast of the spell. Now, it changed afterwards that later in vanilla that as soon as, like I said earlier, that when you're done, as soon as you're done hitting that button, when that cast is already started to go out, your mana regen starts from that point. So, it does make it a little bit easier for healers that way. It would have been probably a lot. I didn't play as a healer back in the day when mana regen started back at the the early back at the end of the cast. It probably made it a lot harder for healers. But no, as MP5, I just think more as a paladin and as a shaman.
Well, the big difference with MP5 is Spirit is MP5 regens no matter what.
Exactly, but
that's the big difference. That's why it's so special. Is that
right?
You will regen. So say you have to restore 6 mana per 5 seconds on your gear. That 6 mana per 5 seconds will happen regardless of what you're doing.
Right.
That's why it's so powerful for shamans and
right.
paladins.
But for priests, even though MP5 gives that no matter what, Spirit will always come on top because you get bonus healing from it.
Sure, for certain classes, yes.
Right.
But static MP5 is very powerful for certain classes as well.
Oh yes, always powerful. I mean, static MP5 is you get the most regen from that. Yeah.
Okay, guys, you made it through the interview, and now it's time for the fun stuff. So let's hit it with some anger management. Each interview, I ask the interviewee to hit me with some of their angriest thoughts about World of Warcraft. So guys, in turn, I can hear some growls already. Defcamp, let's start with you. What makes you angriest about World of Warcraft? And it could be anything, whether it's healing or whatever.
You know what? I right now, I'm a little bit more positive now, but I was so friggin' angry about how negative people were being about Classic. People were saying, oh, God, it's going to be horrible. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. And my whole thing, man, I'm like, you know what, guys? Stop being so damn negative, okay? I hate negativity, and I try not to let that shit get to me. But, a lot of people were being negative, and I got to say, with this recent news, man, I'm really feeling positive. So let's keep that negativity out of here. That shit pisses me off. Enough of that negativity. Let's stay positive. We're going to have a great time in Classic, guys. It's going to be great. Stay positive. Let's move forward.
All right,
that's it right now.
Melderon, go nuts, you angry bastard. What are you angry about?
All right. I want to talk to the DPS that are too shy to roll a tank, but want a tank in dungeons. If you roll a DPS, and this affects the tanks and the healers. If you roll a DPS, hunters can tank in some situations with their pets. But if you're a mage, if you're a rogue, and you run in there before the tank does, you deserve to die. Not in real life, in the game. Because you are running into a situation that you know you shouldn't be into, and you don't have the cojones to run an actual tank. So, if the tank is taking his time and deciding how the pull's going to go, give him the time to do that. Let the tank pull. Don't pull if you're a DPS. Don't pull if you're a healer. Pull if you're a tank. If you want a tank, roll a tank.
That's a great one. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for getting that off your chest, boys. Now it's time for the hot seat. Each interview, I put the interviewee on the hot seat and ask them about a dozen fun hypothetical questions involving the game. So, guys, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Now, I'll try and chop and change between the two of you. We'll see how we go here. Now, I'll start with you, Melderon. A healer, a DPS, and a tank walk into a bar. Who gets the girl and why?
I think the healer will get the girl because he'll last all night long if he's mana efficient.
Very good. All right, Defcamp. If a healer walked into a confessional at a church, what would they confess?
Well, first of all, if it's a priest, they'll probably be on the other side. I would say run out of that confessional immediately. Second, okay, so if I was walking in there and I would confess that I have let people die so many freaking times, and I've said I was AFK or I wasn't paying attention. But if that asshole was sitting in a freaking mechanic, I let you die. Okay, I'm sorry, but I did let you die.
All right, 3 Hail Marys for that one. Okay,
Yes.
now the next question, guys, is for you, Melderon. We'll do this one, this hypothetical situation. All right, picture this. I just want you to put this in your mind. So one day in the middle of the night, your brother calls you and says, mate, long story, I can't go into too much detail. I've been arrested in China for public nudity and I have no money to get bail or a lawyer. I've never needed you more in my life. But Classic came out that day. What do you do?
Oh my god.
Honestly, it wouldn't be that surprising for Melderon. I've called him and asked him words.
Yeah, I would probably... I know exactly what I would do. I would take my laptop, because there's going to be some time where I'm sitting in the airport, right? And I will log in and play Classic while I'm in the airport. Because I can't let my brother hang, but at the same time, I got to get me some Classic, so...
Thanks, bro.
Yes.
Okay. Defcamp. If you could... And actually, I'll ask this of both of you, so you both get a shot in. Defcamp, if you could heal your brother of one annoying trait, such as, chewing food too loudly or snoring or something like that, what would it be and why?
Okay, one thing I would say is to make his farts smell less fucking horrible.
Thanks, dude. Thanks.
Because they are so bad. They are the most rancid things I've ever smelled in my entire life. I would have to use a master spell, I think, on that one, but I hope we will get the job done.
All right, Melderon, your turn. Tee off.
Oh, man, if I could heal my brother of one thing. Interrupting me during Super Plate Brothers. If you guys have a chance to watch Super Plate Brothers, and I try to say anything, you'll notice that Defcamp
What do you mean you're talking about?
Fantastic.
Oh, God.
All right, Defcamp, back to you. What's the meanest thing you've ever done to your brother in-game?
I've stolen gold from him. Without him
Seriously? This is why we shared accounts or whatever? Or like what?
Maybe.
Thanks for throwing it out.
This is, you want to drop a hard, like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, you son of a bitch.
All right, Melderon, how about you? Now that you can confess, now that you know that, what's the meanest thing you've done to Defcamp in the game?
So I will confess that he's asked me for things that I had and I said I didn't have them. So like, yeah, they'd be like, "Hey, do you have a bag?" And I'm like, "No, I don't have one." And I'll just have it, and I'm not even using it. But I'm just saying,
You'll
I don't
sell
have
in the auction house, won't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Cheap bastard.
Just tuck it behind your back going, no, I don't know what you're talking
I
about.
don't know what you're talking about. Exactly.
All right. Now, Defcamp, do you recall your worst job ever as a healer in a group scenario?
My worst performance?
Yeah, like, is there a particular performance that you're a bit embarrassed about where you just were not up to snuff?
Honestly, yeah, I would say it was my first Karazhan run. I was Shadow, and I leveled Shadow first because I would love Shadow, and they asked me to go Holy, right? I literally only used Flash Heal. I thought that was it. I thought using Flash Heal was the best. That's all I had to do. I used Flash Heal for everything, and that's all I did the entire raid, the whole night. I just used Flash Heal.
Okay, now, Melderon, the inverse for you. Do you have a particularly proud moment where you can cite your best job ever as a healer?
Yeah, I was healing Heroic Blackrock Foundry and WoD. I know everybody hates WoD, but WoD had WoD had good content, just not enough of it. And I was just on point. I was just throwing out heals when I needed to. I was running back, doing the mechanics very well. I don't know what it was. I promise I didn't do any drugs or anything, but I felt like I was like on crack. I was just running up and down the room and just getting to where I needed. There was a lot of movement and placement in that fight, and a lot of the fights in Blackrock Foundry, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought I did a really good job. And it's always good when someone tells you, "Hey, man, good heals." That's how you know you did pretty good. So,
Okay.
I hear that up to
yeah, well, yeah, obviously.
I'm kidding.
Next up, fuck, marry, kill, boys. We're familiar with this one if you're listeners of the show, I presume.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay. I'll start with you, Defcamp, and I'll get through both of you on this one. I'll ask the same question. Now, fuck, marry, or kill. Healing a dungeon, helping an old lady across the road, or buying Girl Scout cookies. Fuck, marry, kill.
Okay. Fuck the Girl Scout cookies, marry the dungeon, and kill the old lady.
All right, you heartless bastard. Melderon, how about you?
This is really sad, but I would do the exact same thing. I was trying to be different, but that's exactly. I would definitely kill the old lady. I would definitely fuck the shit out of some Girl Scout cookies, and I would definitely marry the lady.
All right, excellent. Okay, Defcamp, what's the moment outside of the first 5 minutes of the game? And I know it's tempting to say that. A lot of people answer that first 5 minutes, and that's fantastic. But outside of the first 5 minutes, what's the moment that you fell in love with World of Warcraft?
The moment that I fell in love with WoW. Okay, so my first time having a PvP encounter on my road. A warrior, I think, attacked me. I think it was an Ashenvale. And I've never PvP'd before. It charged me, and my instincts kicked in. I don't know what I did or how I did it, but I ended up killing a warrior the first time I dueled another person in game. I was a rogue. I think I routed him, and I managed to get a re-stealth, opened up on him, and killed him. And I have never felt like that again. I was so ecstatic. I could have came. I don't know. It was amazing.
Jesus.
Well, maybe I should tweak the question for you, Melderon. Okay, now that we know that. What's the closest you came to climaxing while playing World of Warcraft?
Well, my answer hasn't changed. It was actually... So, I leveled Undead, so I didn't get a chance to go to Orgrimmar right away. But when I first walked through the gates of Orgrimmar... So, I've been to Undercity. Undercity, to me, was underwhelming. It was cool, but it was underwhelming. When you walk into Orgrimmar for the first time and the drums hit, and I made my character look up to the center spire where those zeppelins are attached to. They're not functional zeppelins, but they're kind of. You look up there and it's like, holy shit! And then you look down at the bank and there's 300 people standing there. That's when I knew I was in a game that I've never played. So this is my first MMO, and that's where I was hooked. Right there, I was like, this is a real living, breathing world, and the music and everything just kind of swept in together. So, and I almost climaxed.
Almost being the key word.
Yes.
Okay. Now, final question, guys. You've done so well. Defcamp, tell me why you are most excited for World of Warcraft Classic.
Okay. I am most excited for Classic, guys, because I personally feel like my Classic experience in Vanilla was short-lived. It wasn't enough, and I fell in love with the game at that time. I fell in love with everything. My character, the character immersion, with the world, PvP, with the lore, with everything. But it was short-lived for me. I came in, I was a complete noob, right? I started at 1.8, 1.9. I got to do a little bit of PvP, a little bit of raid. I want to experience everything that I didn't experience. And I want to do it on a Blizzard server, and I want to do it, and I want to friggin' spend as much time as I can doing it, and really grab it by the horns and just have an awesome time. All the things that I wanted to do that I missed out on in early vanilla, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to have the best time doing it.
Okay, Melderon, how about you?
So in addition to what Defcamp said, because I agree with all of that, but in addition to that, I want to be rewarded for the work I put in. And I have never felt, with the retail game, I do not feel that way at all. I want to put in the work and get rewarded for what I put in. And I want to put that first gray cloth shoulders on at level 15 and be like, holy crap, I have shoulders. I want to get that first white sword and put it on and be like, holy crap, this is way better than the thing I picked up when I first started. Yeah. I want to be rewarded. That's what I'm most excited about.
Excellent.
Hell yeah, brother.
Absolutely, I agree. Here. All right, guys, you made it. That's the interview. Woo! Please plug your stuff again. How can people find you? Where can they find you? What do you do?
Go ahead, Melderon.
Okay, we are on YouTube at Defcamp and Melderon TV. We are on Twitter at Def_Mel TV, and we have a Discord. The links to the Twitter and the Discord are in all of our video descriptions, especially, the newer video descriptions. And also, hopefully, soon, Defcamp will be streaming at some point on Twitch or YouTube. Look out for that. If he does stream on Twitch, it'll be under the Defcamp name. If it's on YouTube, it'll probably be under Defcamp Melderon TV. So just keep an eye out.
Keep an eye out. That'll be soon, guys. I promise. It's coming soon.
Okay. Now, thanks so much for that. Listeners, everyone, please, I just want to add this. And if some of you know me, you know this about me. I am not in the habit of ass kissing and sort of, saying things just for the sake of saying them in interviews. And you'll notice that through a lot of my interviews, I don't get in the habit of, the pre-match kissing as you get in some places. But it's great that we're a community and we all come together and we all respect each other's work. But I just want to say, please do go and check out Defcamp and Melderon's channel, because they definitely deserve a bit more attention. And some of the stuff that they've got there is a lot of fun and very insightful. And if you've been paying attention to what they have just said over the last near 3 hours in this 2-part podcast. And again, guys, I cannot thank you enough for giving me the time when, we talk about community, things like that, but realistically, you owe me nothing. And yet you have sat down here so pleasantly and so intelligently and just chatted about just healing for nearly 3 hours in the game. And I really do implore listeners to go over and check out your stuff, because it's quickly becoming one of my favorite channels on YouTube, and I do enjoy keeping up as much as I can. I know I'm a busy man at times with the show, with your content. So I just want to tell the listeners, please do go and check the boys out and show them some love. So thanks so much again, guys, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Well, Josh, thank you for having us. That was very nice of you. Thank you for saying that. But again, you're doing God's work here, man. So, you're doing the Titans' work, we should say.
You really inspired us, honestly, Josh. A lot of your podcasts and what you've been doing here on the Countdown to Classic really inspired us to want to do what we're doing on the Def Talk series and everything. And I got to say thank you, and thank you so much for having us on here, because when somebody wants to talk classic WoW, I'm there, baby.
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right, enough of that. Let's get our hands off of each other's groins. Let's go back to stealing each other's money. And thanks so much again, guys. And we'll see you around the traps.
All right. Same here. Peace, everybody.
Peace, everybody. Keep on keybinding and grinding.
Ow.
And that's the interview done, and thank you so much to Defcamp and Melderon again for taking so much time out for Countdown to Classic. The guys could not have been more accommodating as I asked question after question after question, and they never lost their cool or patience with me. And I really could not be more thankful to them and their willingness to be a part of the kind of intelligent, long-form conversations that I love about World of Warcraft Classic. Please do be sure to head to Defcamp and Melderon's YouTube page to find more of the guys there. Their channel is truly one of the most underrated places for critical thinking about World of Warcraft Classic that you'll find around. So please throw the boys some love and check out their stuff when you can. But for now, that's the show, everyone. But just before you go, I want to shout out to the members of the Countdown Council, whom I call every week for input on where the show should head in the week to come. So shout out to Borzen, Raidmar, Cam Sowen, Palfurus, Permadrunk, Rarebit, Seven Winters, Tsunami, The Anton, Wilson Ma, and Valaco. Thank you so much for your phenomenal support of the show. Countdown to Classic would not be the same without your support. And also, a big thank you to supporters Hurlbert, Good Kisser, Myrtle Banks, and Purgatos81, as always. Anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. I shall see you again on Friday. Look forward to seeing you all then. Have a great day.